Happy Wednesday. You made it to Ash Wednesday for many of you, and also the middle of the week, and a ton of basketball in a basketball-crazy area and state last night. And Kevin Bowen, if you love basketball, and we all do, last night was a smorgasbord. Just from 7 o'clock on, just flipping channels around, recording things. Make sure you can go back and watch it. Just a lot of fun, but you and I were talking about this before the show. Basketball has always been a game of runs, and last night the Pacers got a key run in the middle of the fourth quarter. Indiana gave up a key run in the last 2 minutes of their game at Oregon. That's what it was.
Well, two things. I think James Boyd might still be stuck in the Carmel High School parking lot, so we will effort James here shortly, as that was quite the scene last night in the Eric Clark Activity Center, getting sectionals underway. And Mark Dykton, does that define heartbreak?
Oh, it's brutal. I had the option to cash out, and I'm like, you know what? No. I'm letting it ride.
All Indiana parlay.
You didn't cash out.
Purdue cooperates like none other. They cooperated so much the paint crew ran out of the three signs. They had so many of them last night. They had a makeshift one there late. The Pacers, I thought for the most part, they handled business there. And then, lo and behold, you freeze frame it with 90 seconds to go. Indiana's up 1 or 2, late shot clock. Here you go. What did that spread finish at? Was it 5.5 or 6.5?
6.5.
6.5. You got like 8 points to play with. I mean, we were literally sending kids to college.
We were. Yeah.
And then
on that $62?
And then Vegas takes that to Kimbe Mutombo finger and says, not so fast.
So close we could taste it. I had other people in my mentions too, like, we had it, man. We had it. I'm like, we did.
I feel this way when we have 9 o'clock games. Oftentimes, that fan base will wake up, and really, for the most part, they haven't consumed maybe a huge chunk of what happened. So if you're an Indiana fan and you look at, what was it, 73-64? I forget exactly what the final score was. You will look at that, and you'll think, oh, yeah, I'm sure we were down 5-7 the whole second half. That's how it unfolded. Not at all. You are having the lead with 90 seconds to go, and Jackson Shellstad hits a three from Bandon Dunes Golf Resort in Oregon. And from then on,
it was just all free throws.
Oregon 10-0 run to end the game. So one that got away, certainly for Indiana, and they will have a massive one inside of Assembly Hall against a bubble-licious team in Ohio State coming up on Saturday. So great in West Lafayette, I would say. Tyrese Halliburton, great in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And boy, for 38, 39 minutes, it looked like it was going to be great out in Eugene, but Indiana could not close it out last night.
No, and Purdue cruising home. James Boyd, you were at Carmel High School last night for some sectional action.
He sprinted in here. James
Those
Boyd
games not
with
quite
glasses
as close,
on.
but
I'm
yes,
to that.
No contacts this morning.
No contacts this morning. Full disclosure, I think I woke up at 9:52 or 7:50, 6:52. Get my times wrong.
Boy, that's a hell of an effort to get in here that quickly.
Yeah, man. If I didn't say anything, I guess nobody would have really would have known. But I got to be a little more disciplined there, I guess, with the alarm. But yeah, I had a good time at Carmel, packed house. Shout out to Ray Mattingly again for getting me a ticket. I needed it because it was standing room only. Talked to Kyle Neddenriep after the game. Saw Greg Rexhaw there as well, and amazing atmosphere. So I was watching that game and then watching the Purdue game on my phone and watching Pacers on my phone. And, couldn't get enough basketball and got home, obviously, and watched IU be right there and let it slip away.
KB, Greg Rakestraw, there's like 8 of him, right? He's in every high school gym at every sectional last night, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he called 7 different sectionals last night. James, it looked like you had some very good seats inside of the Eric Clark Activity Center. Was that just a early pregame pick, or was that indeed feet on the hardwood?
It wasn't that close. They actually had a row for, VIP seats.
I know, I kind of saw that. I was like, man.
And I was like, dang, I don't know. I think you could sit there.
Is that going to the new natatorium there?
I don't know. You can get that, can't you, KB?
I cannot. I'm not a Carmel alum.
But I guess you can sit there. But I was like, I'm not affiliated with any school, so I was like, I don't want to be the one non-Fishers guy, non-Westfield guy, and I stand up after a kid makes a good play, and they're all looking at me like, what are you doing? So it's always easy to find a good seat when you just got to squeeze in, and you're skinny, and you're one person. So
what'd you learn last night?
I mean, I learned that Westfield has a pretty good team, but Fisher's just on another level. I felt like they're just the best team in the state, as they've been all year, undefeated. But it was a fun atmosphere, and honestly, I just relearned how much I love high school basketball because, man, I don't think refs get paid enough to deal with what we do at the games and yelling and things like that. But, I mean, you see the agony on some of the kids' face when they lose and the joy when they win. It's everything that's right with sports.
The thing I learned just couldn't keep my eyes off of Tyrese Halliburton and just the ease with which the game is coming to him right now. He sees the court incredibly well. He's scoring when he needs to score. He makes the right pass almost all the time. 28, 15, and 2 last night. And this is becoming just a regular thing for him. Like, his games are becoming must watch.
All NBA first teamer here in the last month. I don't think there's any debating that. You try not to take it for granted. I think, whether it was James asking about Tyrese Halliburton yesterday to Rick Carlisle or myself, it was like, how do you put this into proper context? Again, what he's doing. And this is the early season Halliburton we saw last year. That's exactly what we've seen. I thought he had a very telling quote post-game last night and being like, these two teams, Pacers, Rockets, they met back early in the season. And Tyrese said when he watched film of that game to get ready for last night, he's like, I didn't even recognize myself. I mean, he's like, I need to throw the first 15 games of the season away. And obviously you can't do that, but certainly what he's been the last month is a 180 from what he looked like coming off the Olympics, coming off the injuries, et cetera, et cetera. So it happens at a great time. And he said it last night. Is he peaking at the right time? You hear this often in basketball. You want to play your best in March. Well, you also want your stars to be looking like that. At times, did he run out of gas last season? Remember, that playoff run was so Jekyll and Hyde for him last year as he fought through injuries to get to the 65-game threshold and all of that. I thought Miles Turner and Aaron Nesmith were outstanding in the fourth quarter. That game had gotten to the point where Houston had made the huge comeback. Dylan Brooks hits the three, and it's like, oh, no.
I think they had a 1-point lead for
Here
a
we
minute
go,
there,
yeah.
didn't they?
And I thought Turner and Nesmith were really, really good. Thomas Bryant, key minutes early. I know that'll get overlooked, but when Turner gets into foul trouble, we've obviously seen that drop off before. I thought Thomas Bryant was really key. And, I think Houston's a pretty good basketball team. But I also kind of looked at last night and be like, you still need to make sure you take care of business. You are getting them second night of a back-to-back. They don't have Fred VanVleet. You've got 6 of 7 on the road. I mean, you start to add up all of that. It's just important to take care of business at home. And again, I don't want to act like Houston is some lottery team because they're certainly not. But the Pacers definitely did enough there with some big plays late, and their star was indeed that.
Tari Eason came out like he was on fire for the Rockets in the second half yesterday. Where did he come from all of a sudden?
Well, he's a guy that some Pacers fans really wanted in the draft
I
a
like
couple
him,
years
but he
ago.
was on it.
Obviously, they are a great rebounding team. So important for the Pacers to get that done. And now they will shift gears to the road at Atlanta coming up tomorrow on Saturday and next week. You can circle it on the calendar. Tuesday with Milwaukee, Saturday with Milwaukee. Those are the games of the year when you look at it from a regular season standpoint. The impact on that and what it means to home court in the playoffs.
Both teams 35 and 25, and really, you don't want to split those games. You want to win both of those games. That'll really put you in a nice spot because Milwaukee's not going away, KB. They're just not going to go away, and they've been playing really great basketball as well. Do want to talk about Purdue just a little bit. JB, you think that was more indicative of Purdue getting their groove back or Rutgers really struggling?
I think it's a little bit of both. I figured Rutgers made some really tough shots in the first half, and I was just like, wow, like you can see why they have two guys that are going to be probably top 10, top 5 picks. But on top of that, I thought that Purdue was taking better shots, playing better basketball overall, and eventually those tough shots aren't going to fall the entire game unless you just have an ungodly performance. But we saw that eventually the dam kind of broke. They play better basketball, and they're the better team overall. And then I thought when Fletcher Lawyer twisted his ankle, Purdue fans are probably like, oh, my gosh, what happened? And then he comes back and he shoots even better. So I was thinking,
bang, bang.
A few of them probably thinking, you need to tweak your ankle a little bit more, if you're superstitious. So it was a really strong game from them, a very good bounce back game. And then anytime you shoot, I think at one point they were like 18 for 36 from three. You're shooting that many threes at that clip, you're not going to lose the game.
Yeah, and again, what's Purdue playing for? I think that's kind of a question you have here early March. I think, last night was another step in the right direction to try to get out of the 4 games in 4 days over here at Gainbridge Fieldhouse next week. So that is important. I think we should mention, obviously, Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, they did something last night I don't think any Big Ten team has done in the last Big Ten duo, I should say, has done in the last 20 years, and that's each of them hit 7 threes in a game. So that's the storyline. But I would say if you dig deeper, what Jakari Harris did for them last night, again, Miles Colvin now has strung together a couple weeks of shooting the basketball better. That is really key for this team now and trying to find some others, when you get deeper into March. And obviously the quality is not a Rutgers team that is easily one of the most underachieving teams in all of college basketball. So 100 last night. Shout out to Carmel's Brian Waddell for getting to that 100 mark. Purdue now shifts very quickly. They've got Illinois here for the season finale coming up on Friday night. Stephen Holder going to join us today at 8 o'clock. We didn't expect a whole lot on the franchise tag deadline, and sure enough, all we got is 2. I think it's the fewest the NFL has had since 2006. So a very quiet NFL trade deadline, but still some Colts items to get to today. Saw Daniel Jeremiah is really banging home the Sam Darnold drum.
A couple of people have been doing that.
Yeah, he is, and he'll be expensive if the Colts actually do go after him.
Well, we'll find out what that means and what it will say about the future of the Indianapolis Colts coming up in a moment. Morning check down right around the corner as well. Mark Dykton in the house. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. How you guys doing?
We're doing well. Any WWE action at your house with the girls last night? No chairs over your
Besides
head?
me getting my ass kicked by them for a little bit, yeah, not much going on. And then the parlay.
I was going to say, ass kicked by them more or the end of the parlay?
No.
If
I felt
you were
like
an
Mike
IU
Woodson in the locker room after the game.
If you're an IU fan last night, you wish you didn't watch that game, not because your team played poorly necessarily. It's because you don't want to see what happened in the final 90 seconds. Like your feelings after Galloway hits the 3 with 2 minutes to go, to then how you felt at the end of the game. That is a rough 11:22 p.m. feeling on a Tuesday night.
I was nervous heading into it that I was like, we're putting a lot of faith in Mike Woodson's crew on this final leg of the parlay. And then I was like, we got it. 2 minutes left. This is a cakewalk now. And it all dissipated. I'm like, my God, that couldn't have gone worse.
And we will play the Mike Woodson audio upcoming. To say that Mark Dykton was needed on the dump button a time or two would be an understatement. I thought probably the most fired up I've heard Mike Woodson postgame all year.
We're disappointed. We're not defeated. The All Indiana Parlay will return, and we will get a victory.
All right, that's all coming up next. It's Sports Radio 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
A Mike Woodson rant we'll get to here in a few. It's a busy morning check down on this Wednesday morning. Over Gainbridge Fieldhouse last night, now 10 games above 500. The Pacers, 115-102. That score, maybe a little skewy. It was just a huge run, really, by Indiana in the final 6-7 minutes. Tyrese Halliburton, outstanding. 28 points, 15 assists, only 2 turnovers. 6 straight double-doubles for the Pacers star. Again, Houston took the lead about midway through the fourth quarter. The Pacers made virtually all the plays, though, the rest of the way. Afterwards, Rick Carlisle on the W.
Tyrese was great. He's learned how to adjust to all the different defenses. Tonight it's big physical guys. Other nights it's guys that are just denying him all, 94 feet. Other nights it's double teams. Other nights it's just, physical play, teams taking liberties and stuff like that. But he's adjusted to everything and has a great feel for, when he's got it going to, keep the run going and when to get other guys involved. And so, the balance has been great. It's one reason that his turnovers have been very low, as a general rule. And tonight, defensively, he really battled on the inside and came up with some big rebounds at big times.
I thought in the fourth quarter, Jeff, Miles Turner, Aaron Nesmith, outstanding. Again, Dylan Brooks hits that three, takes the lead, and then I thought the Pacers made all the plays the rest of the way. They
did make all the plays, and the ball just started finding the bottom of the net, too. Double figures for Pascal Siakam, Nesmith, Turner. Toppin had a really nice spurt there at one point. And Thomas Bryant, as you mentioned earlier, the first half, really keeping the Pacers even with the
100 in West Lafayette last night. 18 threes for the Boilermakers, fourth most in school history. You had the duo of Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, each of them hitting 7 threes. Purdue said first duo to do that in a Big Ten game in 20 years. So very impressive. The offensive explosion. You want to get specific. The second halves, each of these last 2 games, that had been the issue during the losing streak. You put up, 50 in the first half, 50 in the second half. They were great in each half last night. But again, UCLA, the final 6-7 minutes of that one. And then last night, good on Purdue, senior night for Caleb Furst. They will now close out the season at Illinois on Friday. And out in Eugene last night, it was an excruciating final 90 seconds as Indiana tried to close out what would have been a win that I think would have locked their bid to the dance. Trey Galloway hits a three with a little over a minute 30 to go to take the lead. Oregon comes back, late shot clock. Jackson Shellstad shoots one from Portland. It goes in, and they make all their free throws the rest of the way. Galloway came down on the other end. He turned it over, and then Indiana did the foul thing, and Oregon hit pretty much all their free throws down the stretch. Speaking of free throws, let's hear from Mike Woodson.
We had our chances, but listen, guys, in a physical game like this, it can't be 21-7. You gotta be kidding me. 21-7 on free throws. It's bullshit. It just can't be not in a physical game. They're a physical team, and it can't be that lopsided. It's impossible.
Did you think that was mostly with Ballo and her new inside, or?
No, I'm just saying it can't be 21-7.
What was the ref's message to you?
Well, again, it's what it is. I can't go back and get it. But in a physical game like that where both teams are battling their asses off, you can't punish one team and put one team at the line for 21 times and the other team only get there 7 times. That's awful.
I'm usually not an official guy. I thought Indiana did get a poor whistle at various moments throughout that game. I will nitpick a little bit. 21-7 is probably more like 15-7 when you play the foul game in the final minute or so. But nonetheless, I thought Indiana did get a poor whistle.
Yeah, I thought there was one play in particular where I was like, I feel this for IU fans and the coaching staff when Shellstad went to the basket hard, and then he pushed off Miles Rice.
Oh, that was the worst call of the night.
I know. And then Miles Rice gets called for a blocking foul, and I'm like, well, I cover football. That's a stiff arm. So I was just a little confused by that call. And those
it looked like
ones,
Notre Dame trying to tackle Tyler Warren.
Yeah, again, those are the ones where just in the margins in a game like that can really swing things and hurt you. But obviously, better late game execution overall would help you as well.
Yeah, that was a kick in the you-know-what type of loss for Indiana just because you felt like you had it right there. Again, now all the pressure goes to Saturday. You do get Ohio State in your building, and this is as bubbly as a game as you're going to get. this time of year. You look at any bracket, whatever, Indiana's on the right side, barely. Ohio State wins in double overtime last night. They're right there. So huge one in Assembly Hall coming up Saturday afternoon. Unfortunately, the season, a very nice first season for Paul Casaro, comes to an end last night. They actually had a lead at halftime at Wright State. Wright State, though, pulled away in the second half. So IU Indy season is over. You got Butler in action tonight. They've got Xavier inside of Hinkle Fieldhouse. That'll be senior night for a variety of Butler Bulldogs in that one. Anything else on your guys' plates?
Just the high school basketball sectionals last night. James is out in Carmel. Waiting in line? Did you have to wait in line longer or did you go early?
No, I was there early. I've learned, having covered games, you probably got to get there early. So they had 2 games, so I went for the first one as well between Noblesville and Carmel. And even then, getting there, I might have got there, the game started at 6, got there maybe 5:45. And there was still like overflow parking, and we had to walk all the way back to the gym, and they had like a little, the street shut down so you can keep walking across. So even then, it was definitely a line. You could tell it was a place to be. So again, game in front of me, game on my phone, game when I got back home, game in my dreams, when I woke up this morning a little bit late. So
and confirmation that Noblesville is really good.
Yes. Noblesville, they have some players, but again, Fishers is on a different level. They kind of remind me of that Ben Davis team that went undefeated a few years ago, where they don't have like a high major star. There's no
kind of like
Greg
Warren
Oden.
with David Bell is what I go back to as well.
But they have a bunch of really good players who have pretty good size, pretty good athleticism. What is it named? John Anthony Hall, going to Stanford on a football scholarship, from what the crowd told me. This kid was dunking like D Rose.
Yeah, he was a runner-up for Mr. Football.
Yeah, I could see why. I was like,
Impressive.
This is why you. But just floating to the basket. So it was a very fun atmosphere.
Boy, you feel for Shane Sumter and Westfield, to lose at 6 o'clock on Tuesday night. That's certainly not indicative, or excuse me, the 7:30 game, and that's nowhere near indicative of certainly the type of program he's built. And they lost, they have lost a good amount over the last few years from a personnel standpoint, and for them to certainly make that a game, because it looked like at moments, James, that Fishers was maybe going to run away with that. But
That's what I mean. I thought it was impressive that they hung the way they did.
All right, on the other side, again, a quiet NFL franchise tag deadline. We are 1 week out from the official new league year. Who are the Colts free agents? What to make of yesterday's news and how it impacts the Colts? We'll hit on that and plenty of reaction to a busy night in hoops. This is a Fan Morning Show. Kevin Bowe and Jeff Rickard, James Boyd and Mark Dykton on another heartbreaking recap of a All-Indiana parlay that fails.
Getting to be that time in the National Football League. The transition and franchise tags have come and gone, only 2 of them. And now we are left to wonder what the Indianapolis Colts are going to do with free agency. Are they going to get just a guy to compete at quarterback? Are they going to go get a quarterback? Because there's a lot of online momentum, for whatever that's worth, KB, surrounding Sam Darnold at this point in time. And if Sam Darnold comes here, he's not really coming here for competition, is he?
No, well, yeah, I mean, you wouldn't be paying him to be the backup, certainly. And I think that's a question you have to ask yourself. I really think Darnold, maybe Justin Fields would apply to this. You know, if you are going out and getting a Darnold, for example, that's going to eat up so much of your cap. I'm not a fan of it. I know Daniel Jeremiah was talking on Twitter yesterday about, the Colts need to make a move. He'd be a clear upgrade, and I still think it keeps you in keeps you in NFL purgatory. Well, and you look at it, I mean, Justin Jefferson last year, a top 5 defense, and still in the biggest games of the season, Minnesota scores 9 points against the Rams and lays the eggs in the season finale when they're playing for the 1 seed against the Lions there. So, I don't need to see the Band-Aids. And it's probably PTSD. Full, hand raised. It's probably PTSD from watching the Band-Aids play out for this franchise for the better part of ever since Andrew Luck did hang it up. But a $30-some million move for Sam Darnold, no thanks.
JB, here's the other thing. I agree with everything that KB is saying, but just to entertain the possibility, at least we're not talking about a guy who's probably in his last year or 2 in the NFL.
Yeah, I guess that's the point of it. I believe Sam is in the late 20s, and Daniel Jones is in the late 20s, and Justin Fields is 25, and so there's options out there that are more than just the 1-year stopgaps that we've seen, time and time again with some of these older quarterbacks with the Colts. But to KB's point, I mean, you've seen the ceiling elsewhere. I don't know why you would expect it to be different here. And in my opinion, that would be we want to kind of save our butts move, so we can just get into the playoffs, get that off our back and say, hey, well, we made the playoffs, we won the division, and even if they fizzle out, it's like, well, we made progress. Can you really get rid of us? That's what it feels like to me if they were to go that route, but obviously it's early. But I do expect Sam Darnold to be sort of the first domino to fall in the QB pecking order, and after that we'll be able to see, okay, where do they go from here? But it's hard for me to envision them really chasing him, and if they do, to KB's point, I mean, you're selling us a dream, a pipe dream when it comes to Anthony Richardson, his supposed development, because at that point, I don't think it's competition, because I think that Sam Darnold will probably win the job. And just as far as pure quarterbacking, I mean, I get it. And with Anthony, there's other things you have to factor in, the running ability and the upside. But, again, it's really hard to argue bringing him in, paying him that amount of money, and then watching him sit behind Anthony Richardson.
And Kevin, I mean, if I'm giving a dude $30 million, I damn well better be in the playoffs. And I better have
we got spicy Kev.
Ended my AFC South drought that is now 10 years long. And look at the AFC, guys. Look at the quarterbacks in the playoffs last year. I mean, outside of Russell Wilson, no one's a Band-Aid. All these are drafted, budding, whatever, current stars, however you want to define the other 6 of them. So, he's been on 4 teams in 5 years for a reason. And again, Justin Jefferson ain't showing up here in Indy and a top 5 defense. I just don't think he walks in here and says, boom, here are the Colts. They are a playoff type of team. And again, it would eat up. I mean, you got $35 million in cap space. James has gone over some of these cap casualty guys that you could possibly open up a little bit more. We'll see how the next week plays out. That's never been Chris Ballard's MO. With James, though, I think there are some guys on the roster you can certainly do that with. And that would obviously help you. But if you were to pursue a Darnold, who did not get the franchise tag yesterday, that was a thought, would he get that? It's kind of wild to think no quarterback got a franchise tag. Only 2 players in the entire league got one. That one is just not, it just, to me, it's handing out an insane price tag to still be stuck in the middle of the NFL.
And you had talked about this last week when we were at the Combine, KB, to put a finer point on all the quarterbacks in the AFC. Forget the young guys that are coming up that had nice seasons last year, but in their prime right now, Mahomes isn't going anywhere. Joe Burrow just keeps getting better. They're trying to figure out how to keep everybody in Cincinnati. Josh Allen isn't going anywhere. They're just all over the place. And if you're going to compete in the AFC, you better find a quarterback that can give you a chance against those guys.
Well, you just brought up a quarterback that didn't even make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, like, when you start to look at this list, again, obviously you have Mahomes, you have Allen, you have Lamar. I mean, you have the same final 4 quarterbacks back-to-back years, C.J. Stroud joining that group. And then this year we saw Herbert, finally get a taste of it. Obviously, Bo Nix had a really nice rookie season. And again, that list does not include Burrow. I think a lot of people out there would say, hey, if Tua wasn't out for a month plus, Miami probably would have been in the playoffs, or certainly, again, very close to that. Does Trevor Lawrence have a renaissance? I mean, there are still some other guys, even the NFL, that I wouldn't classify from a Colts standpoint. So Stephen Holder going to join us coming up at 8. And James, I say this because you have to find some answer at quarterback. And just because I say this answer out loud doesn't mean I think it's, the greatest answer. But it seems like when you consider finances, you consider some play style, if you believe it's just a death hole of the franchise he was drafted by, it just seems like Daniel Jones makes the most sense. Because, again, to me, he's not going to cost Sam Darnold money. He does play a little bit like Anthony Richardson. I don't want to act like these are apples to apples, but, he has the ability to make some plays with his legs. If you believe no one can succeed with the Giants, okay. Again, Darnold's been on, a handful of teams at this point, 4 teams. So, that's a little bit different than Daniel Jones' situation. And to me, that price tag would be more in the let's call it $10 million annually. That would allow you then to still do some other stuff here in the offseason, because you do need to do other stuff. And if you were to go make a move for Darnold, that would really limit you from a cap space standpoint.
Yeah, I believe the cap space is maybe at like 34, 35 right now, obviously with some releasings of players, i.e. Braden Smith. I know you talked about bringing Samson Ebukam back, so maybe he's out. I think Rodney Thomas, you could save $3 million in cap space. So, again, you could create more, but to your point, Kevin, you don't want to spend half or the bulk of it on a quarterback, especially when, you just ran through the list. It's all about chasing those guys, at the top of the AFC. And do you feel like, Sam Darnold can do that? I don't think so. I don't think that he can go toe-to-toe with, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and get you somewhere where you really haven't been in a long time. Whereas, people could argue and say, well, Anthony hasn't gotten you anywhere. The whole point was the upside. Like, best case scenario, we see the version of Anthony that was against the Jets. And you're like, okay, that guy can go do some special things. And so I agree with you there. I also think that Daniel Jones, from everything I've read and heard, talking to people about his actual character, seems like a really good teammate, someone who's been in Anthony's shoes. So perhaps he would be able to kind of give him the blueprint of like, hey, here's how it kind of went down for me. So you don't go through the same thing and kind of get discarded. But, none of it feels like a great answer, which is why we say every day, like, it's in the best interest, Jeff and KB, of the Colts for Anthony Richardson to work, or at least to stick with him, in my opinion, because...
Or fail. Let me be clear. Like, yes, obviously the best interest would be work, but, like, if he fails, you have an answer, and you haven't spent $30 million on, I would argue, another quarterback that doesn't get you out of where you're at. Maybe you win 1 or 2 more games, but, like, I'm all about clarity and answers and how quickly you can get to those at the most important position in sports. You want to play the Daniel Jones game for a second, boys?
Yeah.
70 games in the career of Daniel Jones. The biggest win of his career.
Against the Colts.
Look at that. Look at that.
It's because I was there.
Yeah.
Roses. Was that New Year's Day, James? I'm trying to think of when that was. That was kind of late in the season, right? A couple years ago?
Yeah, I want to say it was my first year on the beat, so 2022.
Talk about PTSD.
Major.
Look,
Major. 38-10, the Giants over the Colts. Daniel Jones doesn't have many wins in his career, but that was indeed the biggest.
That was the game that clinched them a playoff berth. I think their first since like 2016. And in my eyes, it's the one that got him paid. Like, he scored 4 total touchdowns. If you look at his numbers, he was brilliant that game. And then that was when everyone in New York was riding high. And obviously, you fast forward to now, it's like,
was that the Snow Angel game?
It might have been.
Was that the Nick Foles convulsing on the field?
Oh, yeah, that was, Yep, that was it. That was it. And
That
that's
image.
when I remember thinking, this team is soft and not good.
Colts seem to bring out the best in Giants quarterbacks the last few years.
Jeff twisting the knife here.
No,
I have seen them literally
Drew
tell
Lock highlight film.
I'm having the
90% of Colts
PTSD. Yes.
highlights.
Yeah.
More on this. Stephen Holder going to join us in 15. I thought Tyrese Halliburton had a pretty enlightening comment after the game last night. And James, you and I actually talked about this the other day. like for a star player, I really enjoy listening to Tyrese discuss the game of basketball. I think some guys, and I don't know, to be fair, I think more NBA guys are a little bit more open than some of the NFL guys when it comes to just sharing trade secrets, if you will. And to me, at times, it's not that important. I've always thought Tyrese has been pretty candid in discussing his issues, and you're just talking about life in the NBA. And he is right now, he's on a tear. He's played like an All-NBA player the last month, 6 straight double-doubles. The assisted turnover numbers are crazy. I think last night you saw what truly makes him a $200 million player is like, I feel like when I've watched guys that are great assist players in the NBA, for the most part, they don't have the shot making to the level that like a guy like Tyrese does. You really have one or the other. You're a great scorer, a great shooter, or you're a great facilitator. It's very rare to find both. Obviously, there's a few in the NBA that have that, but I thought Tyrese last night, especially in the first half, yes, he still had assists, but like he was hitting shots and he was making plays as a scorer first. This was Tyrese Halliburton afterwards. I think Tony East teed this up for him just generally on where he's at right now and his season as a whole.
I don't know. I'm just in a zone right now. I think I'm just trying to play the right way. Just trying to make the right plays and just stay aggressive, understanding that when I'm aggressive, we're at our best. So, I didn't want to peak too early. I'm trying to get to peak time by around April, May, hopefully June. That's time for me to peak.
Yeah, I think with Tyrese, he talks about, being aggressive, his aggression. I often wonder, like, what does that mean? Because he can obviously score with the best of them when he's on his A game. He can pass with the best of them, but I think he's picking and choosing the spots a lot better these past few weeks where early in the season or some games, even just recently, where you're like, man, shoot the ball. And I think that confidence is back. He's shooting the ball. He's seeing the game, kind of a play ahead. And to Tyrese's point, man, like, I think he kind of realizes I have to sort of lead this thing. When he's their best player, and I say this with respect because Pascal Siakam is really good, but when he's their best player, I think they're a better version of themselves. And so it was good to see that from him. I'm sure Pacers fans were excited about that. And, I mean, I just go back to, I'll never forget this, when before he played his first game for the Pacers, they had a little press conference, and Kevin Pritchard said, this guy's our Peyton Manning and our Andrew Luck. And I was like, Kevin Pritchard, are you like, did you drink a little something before you came in? Like,
yeah.
what, like this is.
That's a big statement.
Seriously, I was like, do you realize what city we're in and who has a statue out there? The only guy in the city with the statue. And then obviously I'm not saying he's that caliber of player or has done those things, but the trajectory is special. Like he is, trending towards being an all-time great for this franchise. And one last quick point, it's going to be very weird when he makes All-NBA, but he didn't make the All-Star team. So I'd like to know, when's the last time that happened?
To your point, James, you just brought up about this team is at their best when he's, again, boy, I sound like your dad, doing his thing.
Doing his thing.
They're 20-2 when he scores 20 or more. That's a big record. And like, I don't know, maybe it's a question for Rick when he joins us on Tuesday. I'm going to guess that Rick maybe doesn't put a whole lot of stock in that, but that would be hard to ignore for me. Yeah. I mean, 20-2 is an insane record when Tyrese scores at least 20. He had his trainer, Drew Hanlon, courtside last night. I know he has always been a huge advocate, and I get, whatever, individual trainer. I'm sure people have a variety of opinions on that, but he's always been a huge advocate of, no, Tyrese. When it gets to like 50-50 moments and it gets to late clock, like you take the ball. You be the aggressor. You be the shooter, I guess, to just kind of put it as simply as you can there. So Halliburton outstanding last night. And again, I thought Turner and Nesmith, fourth quarter, if for some reason, even if you were James Boyd last night and you were at sectional basketball, you didn't pay attention to Pacers, you fell asleep, you didn't pay attention to IU afterwards, you'll see the final score, and it is not indicative of like how that game felt in the fourth quarter. The Pacers were down midway through the fourth quarter last night. Quinn Buckner in true Quinn Buckner fashion tells us a three is off. That's left by Dylan Brooks. No, it actually went in. So the three goes in. Next thing you know, the Pacers answer that. They go on a huge flurry to end the game, and then Indiana about as excruciating of a final 90 seconds as you're going to watch.
I want to go back to what you were talking about with Tyrese Halliburton. And I think when you look at that incredible 20-2 record when he scores 20 points or more, it's because he always does all the other things too, Kevin. So if you're getting, like last night, 28 points from him, you're not really even surprised that he had 15. That's a lot. But you're not surprised if he has 8 or 9 or 10 and does all the other things. He's just, like last night, I said this at the beginning of the show, he's so in flow. Everything just looked easy for him last night. The shots looked easy. The passes were on point. On time. He just was feeling the flow of the basketball game. So when he scores 20 points or more, you know you're getting all the other stuff with that too.
Shout out to Arthur on PBS. He was skipping around like Arthur when he gets into that, because he wears his emotions on his sleeves.
Yeah,
and when he gets going like that, the smile, the animation that he plays with, that's when you know he's in one of those zones. And obviously his words indicated that post game.
Yeah, a couple years ago, or actually last year during NBA All-Star Weekend, talked to Steve Kerr about Tyrese Halliburton, and Steve Kerr compared the joy that Tyrese plays with similar to what Steph Curry plays with. And it's like, it's joy, it's passion, it's fun. And, he's not this stoic character. Like, it's always funny, maybe I'm too online, but the front runner comments that Pacers fans and Tyrese Halliburton gets, it's like, who wouldn't be skipping or dancing or snarling or whatever when you're playing well? That's the game. That's what we love. And it's funny when you get those criticisms sometimes, because I'm like, I feel like I'm getting a little bit older now, because my dad's era, they were like hated each other. So, a little trash talk, a little skipping, it's warranted when you're playing as well as he has. And again, like he said, you're playing at the right time. I don't know if I believe in the whole peaking at the right time, because, selfishly, if you're a Pacers fan or just a basketball fan in general, you want your favorite player, favorite team to always be peaking, always play well. But to his point, I'd much rather them be playing at this rate than they were earlier in the season.
Well, is that a health answer? I get what you're saying, James. The whole cliche of you want to be, I don't want to play my best at the start of the year. I want to play it at the end of the year. Well, yes, beggars can't be choosers. But in terms of Tyrese's case, that man had a injured offseason. Yeah. He did not have an offseason of rest. Yeah. So is the All-Star break being a month ago, is that kind of, I almost hear a little bit, or I at least have a little bit more like, oh, there actually is some truth behind that statement, and not just like wishful thinking of, you obviously want to be playing your best at the end of the year.
Yeah, I talked to Dustin DePierac and Tony East at the game a couple of days ago when I was there, and they were just saying how he is like moving differently, just physically. Like watching him on tape, he moves differently than he was early in the season, and you can see him, having more pep in his step. And I thought the biggest key to me is when he turns the corner and finishes at the rim, because when he wasn't like feeling good in his legs, he could never really get around anybody. Still, in my opinion, it's not like the highest strength of his game to break a guy down and go one-on-one and go by him. But he has that capability, and when you see that, I'm like, all right, he's healthy. Because when he's not healthy, it's a lot of settling, it's a lot of sidestep threes or backing out, kicking it out. And he'll still do that. But again, get to the basket, I'm like, that is healthy Tyrese Halliburton.
KB, one other thing last night, you brought it up earlier in the hour for those who might have missed it, but it wasn't just Halliburton last night. All night long, Thomas Bryant kept him going in the first half. Neesmith was terrific throughout. In that second half and part of that run, Miles Turner was terrific. When they have all guys hitting on all cylinders like that, they're going to be tough to beat, especially at the Fieldhouse.
Yeah, John will be peacock strutting here at 3 o'clock because that's what Turner – I don't know if it'll show up in the box score, but I thought Turner over the final 6 or 7 minutes was huge. And the Thomas Bryant thing wasn't, lasting for 48 minutes. So, yeah, he had a great first quarter. So you needed Turner – to get back in the game, not be in foul trouble. And then I thought he delivered in a big, big way. Stephen Holder, reminder, he's going to join us coming up at 8 o'clock. Boy, I walked outside weather-wise this morning. I guess I wasn't expecting that.
The rain?
Yeah. And I thought this is very fitting for the final 90 seconds in Eugene last night for Indiana.
Supposedly never rains on game day there in Eugene. I don't know if you've heard that.
Man.
Mike Woodson was really upset about his team's defense on the Jackson Shellstad 3. Do we just chalk that up to, like, that's just a great playmaker hitting one from 35 feet? Anthony Leal's, like, closing out on him.
Way deep.
The shot clock's at, what, 2?
Yeah, I feel like they played great defense. And it happens in sports. You play great defense.
He said that they wanted Nate Biddle. Whoever watched the game, Biddle was their center.
Yeah.
And I thought Umar Bala had some moments of, like,
12
unbelievable hustle. And
he had the block late.
And Biddle got right, and Biddle got it kind of late shot clock. I think Woodson wanted the ball to stay there, didn't want it to go back to the guard who, if you've watched the Big Ten this season, Shellstad does do those things. I mean, there's not many guards. I mean, think of for those that fell asleep, think of a deep Boo Buie shot over the final couple years. And I think Boo Buie did that to Indiana. He certainly did it to Purdue. That's what Shellstad hit last night with Indiana having the lead, about 2 on the shot clock with 90 seconds to go in the game.
Is Boo Buie finally gone?
Yeah.
That's always the joke.
ghost
Scotty
last
Reynolds at Villanova, Jerry McNamara at Syracuse.
Who's the other guy? Ellis at Kansas.
Oh,
Forever.
Yes.
Perry.
Yes.
Yeah. He needs We Grow Hair, Indy.
Kevin with the strays this morning. I dig
Oh,
that.
no. I mean,
I like it. It's
certainly
good stuff.
I did.
All right, Stephen Holder coming up in just a few moments. We'll also talk a little bit more about the Colts and what they do as we start to get we're closing in on legal tampering. Kev, legal tampering. I'm sure none of it went on during the combine, right?
That phrase is annoying to me. How is it legal if it's tampering?
That's just how it works right there. All right, we'll do it all as we continue next. It's the Fan Morning Show with Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Jeff Rickard, Stephen Holder next on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Happy Wednesday. All kinds of basketball. Oh, my goodness. A rookie over here, Mark.
Tart Glenn out of the stands here. 1st and 15.
That's a 5-yard penalty right there. Just excited. So much to talk about.
So far, Jeff too early here and James too late.
That's how it works.
Is that where we're
That's
at?
how it works.
Kevin is just right. It's like the Three Bears. Is that what we got going on here?
Mark's
Porridge today. Maybe we can. Our good friend the Cluster Truck. Shout out to Evan up there and
that was
fan
good yesterday. By the way,
promo code. Maybe we can have some nice cool porridge here. James Boyd, I will give you credit. Alarm went off at what time?
I mean, it went off and I didn't get up, but I got up at 6:49, I think.
I mean,
out the door by 6:51, here by 7:01.
If that's Jake Query, he is still going through the cologne. He is still putting the makeup on. He is doing all of that, and you just busted your ass to get in here on time. You walked in the door like 7:02.
You were right there as we started.
Yeah, I mean,
Did you Usain Bolt it from the garage and up the elevator? And...
I'm an athlete when I need to be.
Wow.
You know?
I like that.
I mean,
was
it helped
impressive.
I parked out there on the circle. I was like, probably not
Did
going
you
to
go flashers?
I did not. No, I actually parked in a spot because I remember you telling me, hey, don't just park anywhere because they'll tell you.
Oh, boy.
Parked in a spot and then
Certainly
ran
know
up and made things work. Look, if you knew my father late, he'd be, I'll tell him after the show and he's going to be like scolding me from the Chicago area, so he'll enjoy that. But, a rite of passage, I suppose.
Amen to that.
Well, it was a late night last night. There's a lot of basketball going on.
Ton of basketball. Late one last night in Eugene. If you missed it, Mike Woodson, some colorful language post-game. We'll get to that. And obviously, Gainbridge Fieldhouse and Mackey Arena. Whole lot of offense for both of those home teams and getting it done last night.
Yeah, you had the Pacers going. You had IU. You had Purdue. You had high school basketball sectionals. That's just the way it rolls here in Indiana. We've got lots of stuff for that throughout the morning here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. But as always, it's that time of year in the National Football League. We're getting closer and closer to free agency, and now the legal tampering period is almost upon us. Lots of rumors out there on the internet, and here to share more insights on the Indianapolis Colts and their path forward, our good friend from ESPN.com, Stephen Holder. Stephen, it's good to talk to you and see you again, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great. I just hope that I'm not too busy next week, but I suspect I might be.
Oh, a little tease there.
I like
Holder.
that.
Yeah, I mean, hey.
Well, listen. They're going to do things, but will they close the deal? That's a whole other story, right?
I feel like the door is open a little bit. Stephen Holder, ESPN, with us here. Okay, let's go there. The words in my eyes or my ears, I should say, and I think you and James would probably agree with it. They do sound different from Chris Ballard. What would indicate change? Like what would define? Okay, the actions have met the words.
So I think one thing would be having a little more or showing a little more leeway when it comes to negotiating. The Colts, very rarely do they ever go beyond their price point. And I'm not suggesting that doing that on a regular basis is a good idea. It's not. I have spent a little too much money in my own life on things that I probably shouldn't have. That was a mistake. So it's a mistake in football too. But they're very rigid about that, right? We do know this. And Chris Ballard has told us when it comes to free agency, they certainly call people. They certainly talk to agents. And what they do, though, is they set a price, and he is very clear. We don't go beyond the set price that they have set going into free agency. So that limits you. When other suitors get involved, the price goes up. Is he willing to go get a guy, even if it's beyond his comfort level? So I don't know. That has not been the case for the most part. Is he willing to do that? They tend to not get those guys once multiple suitors get involved. You can kind of count the Colts out at that point. So will that change? I don't know.
Holder, one thing I want to dig into a little bit is I know you've been plugged in with Anthony Richardson, and he's working with Chris Hess, who worked with Josh Allen, and now, according to Cameron Wolfe, they'll work together this offseason. So all that to say, how do you think Anthony is going to respond, or perhaps even right now, how is he accepting the news of, hey, you got to win the job going into year 3?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to internalize it the same way he's internalized everything else. I mean, that's the one good thing here is that his disposition is pretty good. Now, whether he follows through and does everything he needs to do and accomplishes everything, that's a separate question. But in terms of his attitude and his disposition, in terms of how he has taken all of this in, it seems to be fine. I have had some talks with his agent and just, even us just knowing Anthony, he's kind of not bothered by stuff for the most part. And so I assume he'll continue to take that approach here. But it is something that I do wonder about. I mean, I know what we see and hear from him, but I would not blame him if he was a little confused about this because they told you were the quarterback. I'm not saying he deserves any sort of unquestioned status. I'm not saying that, but there have been a lot of mixed messages here. That is fair, and it would be understandable if he was a little bit, scratching his head a little.
Stephen Holder from ESPN with us here, Payless Liquors Hotline. Let's call Daniel Jones the baseline, if you will, Stephen, for a quarterback move next week. Are you at that baseline? Do you look at it slightly above it? I guess Darnold and maybe Justin Fields would be above it. Do you go slightly below it? Again, let me just throw out names. I'm not saying this would happen, but the below names would be whatever. Winston, Mariota. I don't know why Carson Wentz is on my brain. Obviously, that wouldn't happen. But again, those types of quarterbacks, where do you go? Do you go with the baseline? Do you go above? Do you go below?
Okay, well, the first thing we're going to do is rule out Carson Wentz.
As soon as I said it out loud, I'm like, this might be the dumbest thing I say all day.
No, that's fine. I mean, listen, he's on the free agent list. I mean, it's not a ridiculous thing to say when you're talking about free agent quarterbacks.
That's a backup quarterback in the Super Bowl, Steven. Come on now.
I mean, come on.
I'm sure Jim Irsay can't wait to get Carson Wentz back in the building.
They're very tight, as you know. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so in all seriousness, look, I think here's the thing. I mean, I know we're not talking specific names, but one name I will address. I'll say this: Sam Darnold. Look, I have no idea whether they have any legitimate interest here, but what I would say to you is that if in fact they chase Sam Darnold, then this is no longer a competition because that is going to be extremely expensive, and he's going to have to be your starter because the money will dictate that. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I just went back and looked at Kirk Cousins' contract from a year ago. Now, he is not Sam Darnold, a much more accomplished quarterback. However, he's much older, and he's coming off an injury last year. Do you know what his signing bonus was? It was like $50 million. Okay. I mean, so let's say Sam Darnold gets half that. I mean, even if, and it could be more, I think it might be. Then he's your starter, man. You're not paying a guy $30 million a year to compete with Anthony Richardson. The whole concept is stupid, right? So that would be something that would be completely in contradiction with what they have laid out to us, which is that they want someone to compete with him. So anyway, I do think it's more in the Daniel Jones trajectory. I think Jameis Winston is definitely someone you have to consider. That's the ballpark for me. Those types of quarterbacks. You check in on the price. Does it make sense? I think that would be considered competition for sure, and it would certainly make Anthony have to produce. He would have to produce. There's no question about that. But again, the quarterback competition for me, and that's something I laid out in the story that posted this morning on ESPN. The quarterback competition sounds great, and there should be some sort of other presence, but there also, I think, are some unintended consequences if you open this up as a true competition.
Well, I'll pivot a little bit, Steven. I know you had to be out at the combine with most of us bright and early. You actually got out of it the last day because you were just lying about having a flat tire, but that's neither here nor there.
Photographic evidence of Indy's potholes and the damage they did to me.
The potholes got you, but all that to say, okay, pick 14. It's a fluid position to be picking in the draft. A lot of things can change before or after you when you're picking there. So, who are some names you would consider not named Tyler Warren? Because obviously we know how Indianapolis Colts fans feel about him.
Yeah, one guy that I know they have interest in is Malachi Starks out of Georgia, the defensive back or safety out of Georgia. It is interesting because we don't normally, think of of safeties as early first-round picks. However, those who have paid attention for a long time, you will know that Chris Ballard's first draft pick in Indianapolis was a safety, right, in 2017. And so it is kind of interesting that maybe that could come full circle. I don't know. I would say this. I would tell you that they need to address that position, and I think with a dynamic player, that is just absolutely necessary for them right now. And it doesn't have to be in the draft. It can be in free agency as well, but they've got to, I think, have an impact player there. The other thing I'd say is, I mean, look, there's some impact players there. I mean, is Will Johnson in the mix? Does he make it to 14? I don't know. A lot of people disagree that he will, the corner out of Michigan. But that, for me, is another position where they need a dynamic guy. I just don't think they have that right now beyond Kenny Moore. They have a nice player in Jalen Jones, but they need more than that. And they need more than just one guy anyway. You need multiple guys back there who you can count on, and someone who can match up with some of these elite receivers that you're going to have to see this year. So that's another one. And then, look, with Chris Ballard in the mix, you're always talking about pass rushers. Which one? Which defensive lineman? Interior, outside? I don't know. We'll see. But if you don't put that on the list of possibilities with Chris Ballard, then you don't know the Colts. Right? You always have to. So, it depends on how the board falls, how those guys, which guys get to them. But it's always going to be a factor with Chris Ballard.
Nodding my head at a whole lot of what Stephen Holder just said. Again, Stephen Holder with us here from ESPN, his latest, indeed, on the quarterback position. What would Colts QB competition mean for Anthony Richardson? Stephen, last one from me. How do you think the Braden Smith situation ultimately plays out?
Well, it's very confusing right now just because we don't have enough information. But I would say this. He cannot play on that contract this year.
It's a $19 million cap hit.
You can't do it. And this, it's a cold thing to say. I realize that. He's going through whatever he's going through that prevented him from playing football down the stretch. It was not a football related injury. We know that it was a non-football situation. We still don't have any clarity on that. And I'm telling you, I've tried. I really have. And I've gotten nothing. It is very strange. So I don't know. I can't speak to it. I can't even speculate. But what I would say is you could take that out of the equation even. And I would still probably say the same thing. I still have a problem with the $19 million cap number for a guy who, has been struggling, frankly. I mean, he sort of, I think, got to a point where he was able to work through that knee issue this year and able to play through it. But it was not easy. He was struggling. And I thought he played fine, but I don't know if he played up to the number that he would be paid this year. That's just a cold reality, right?
Do you view restructure or literally on a different team?
Yeah, that's where it's hard to know because I don't know what his status is, right? I mean, let's say this. Let's go with one hypothetical. Let's say he gets beyond whatever happened to him off the field. And he can play football, and it's just a matter of his health. Well, I think you can talk about a restructure. I would be okay with that. I think he's still effective, still a good run blocker, but he can't move the way he used to. That's true. I'm okay with the restructure there, but $19 million that's just not going to work.
1 week from today, free agency officially begins, and if there are going to be different actions from Chris Ballard, it actually will probably begin earlier next week when the old legal tampering period begins on Monday. Stephen, as always, thank you for the conversations. We'll probably do it, if you don't mind, a week from today.
Yep, it should be a busy week. See you guys.
Stephen Holder, ESPN.com.
Legal tampering. That's when you get all day long. The Colts have agreed to. The Chiefs have agreed to.
I was going to say, it's usually not the Colts. It's usually the other teams that have agreed.
I'm wishful thinking here, Kevin.
Yeah.
Will it into existence here, okay?
Right. Jeff's trying to put me to work. But I will say, I did learn, shout out to Pacers PR when I was doing my first, free agency for the NBA. you always have to report agreed to terms. You can't say signed because they haven't officially signed. So
agreed to.
Journalism tip there. And then honestly, we've seen things kind of flip. You can agree to terms, and then terms change, and it doesn't happen that often. But
hello, Josh McDaniels.
Yeah. I'm like, nothing's official until it's on the paper, baby. So I mean, we went through this obviously with Liam Cohen down there in Jacksonville. So getting it back to the Colts, though, I do think that we should, in my opinion, if they're a serious team, you got to get, in my one legitimate starter, not a guy who's going to push for one guy you're coming in and saying it's your spot.
Yeah, and I think the secondary is probably where I would go.
When
I was saying with Steven, I'm nodding my head at a lot of what he's saying. As he described safety and corner, that's where I got to. And again, yesterday, James, I was curious about the franchise tag. Would any other names fall on that list? No one else did. So that means 2 franchise tags were used in the entire NFL this year. Last year, you had 8. Michael Pittman was one of the 8. It's the fewest we've had in like nearly 20 years. Those 2 were both on offense. T. Higgins gets a tag for another year in Cincinnati, and Trey Smith, the guard with Kansas City. So no defensive player was tagged. And I think if you look at where some of this free agency depth is, corner and safety is where you have it. And I'm a fan of double dipping there. I think you got questions presently in the secondary, and I think you got questions down the road. Kenny Moore, I think, is a very quality player. You can't ignore age 30 for a cornerback, though. And so that's something you have to keep in mind as well.
So here's my question for both of you right now. Any 2 free agents out there on the market that you can get, you just make it happen, it works out. Who are the 2 guys you want to bring in?
Javarius Ward's a name I kept on coming back to at corner from the 49ers. I mentioned Byron Murphy yesterday with the Vikings. And then Javon Holland, the safety from the Dolphins. I think there are some other safeties out there that, I should probably pay attention to. But from an age standpoint, he's only 25 years old. So, could you kind of, get a little 2 birds with 1 stone there. So that's probably where I would go. Linebacker, James, is another position that I feel like you could find some names to.
Yeah, I would go there as well. I think realistically, you probably can't sign a super top-tier cornerback in Javarius Ward and also a top-tier safety in Javon Holland.
Yeah, so it's probably hair-rich.
Yeah, you got to pick 1 or 2, but I would say, to your point, KB, one linebacker that I think would be a good fit here in Indianapolis would be Jamian Sherwood from the Jets. 25 years old, a rangier linebacker than E.J. Speed and Zaire Franklin. He would complement Zaire Franklin, I think, a lot better than E.J. Speed. And he had a breakout season last year. So you're taking a little bit of a risk there because he hasn't had it sustained over a long period of time. But if you look at his resume, it's kind of similar to what they want to do with Jalen Carlisle. He was a former safety in college, Jamian Sherwood, that is. Transitioned to linebacker, has good range, good feet, can play in coverage, and can also tackle really well. So I think that if you want to go young, upside, and someone who kind of fits the team need, he's the guy that I would certainly target.
One NFL note to get to that has a local tie to it. I believe later this morning you will get the official retirement announcement from Zach Martin. I said this a couple weeks ago when Zach Martin, when the reports came out that he was going to retire from the game of football. To me, he is on any sort of Mount Rushmore in the state of Indiana for greatest players ever in the NFL, and indeed at the guard position as well. I mean, the stats are just... It's stupid. The dude's got more all-pros than he has holding penalties.
You just watch him.
In his NFL career. And he was a stud left tackle at Notre Dame. The old, are the arms long enough? Okay, he'll just move into guard and be, again, one of the best guards, period, in NFL history. So the St. Matthew Chatard Notre Dame product, certainly one of the best ever, and he officially retires from that. I believe 34 years old, officially retires later today.
It's the Fan Morning Show here on 93.5, 107.5, The Fan, 239-1070, the phone number to call. Joe is on the line right now. Joe has an idea and thoughts on what the Colts should do. Joe, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. So after listening to Holder, I'd seen that guy from South Carolina, that Nick Warney, he's like a perfect RAS score. He ran a 4.38 40. The measurables are all great. I'm thinking Ballard won't be able to help himself. So in 2023, 9 of his 12 picks were at least a 9.0 in the RAS score. So it'll be interesting. I think everybody wants Warren, everybody wants a tight end, but we need safeties, we need corners. I think he's going to go after one of these guys that rated really high and has the measurables.
Yeah, he was the combine freak. Thank you, Joe, for the call. Thank you for listening. James, he was on any sort of combine list of, great testers. And that was the thought coming in. Steven mentioned Malachi Starks from Georgia. Young safety, had really good production early in his career. Didn't have maybe a great final season at Georgia from a strictly ball production standpoint, but you probably can't go wrong with drafting Georgia defenders. James, I'm curious if you heard this. Back in January, I heard different Chris Ballard free agent words. I didn't hear different Chris Ballard draft words.
I would agree there.
So, just let me throw one more in there. I bring that up to say, Joe just went over RAS scores, relative athletic scores, what that means. You look at the testing numbers. The Colts obviously usually draft big-time testers. Joe just pointed it out. I still think that's going to happen. Like, I don't think – I think you got to marry a little bit of, like, great college football player
production
too with it. Like, I think that's been a little bit misguided at times. But, again, I didn't hear that from Ballard back in January.
Yeah, the player that Joe referenced, Nick, I'm hoping I'm saying his last name right. I have to get this corrected during the break. But Eman Wari?
Eman-Wari, yeah.
Eman Wari. And he was, he is a dynamic athlete. I was reading some things about him, watching a little tape. I'm not saying I'm some film guru, but it does seem like, from what I understand, he can play either safety spot. Really good athlete, really fluid athlete, and someone who could, step in and be a day one starter. And so I do think that's a name that the Colts would consider. Is he the top-rated safety in this class? No, I don't think so. I think Malachi Starks, is up there. But it wouldn't surprise me if they do target someone like him because he fits the team need and he is a super athlete. And I get a kick out of Joe and the other fans whenever they chime in about the RAS scores because it's so fun. That's what we do. Like when I see Kevin in a month from now, and we're over at West 56th Street in the media room, and we get to day 3. We all have the RAS, model basically pulled up, and it's like, all right, when they pick a name, we just kind of look. And even when we're trying to guess who they might consider, like later in the later rounds, we're just like, all right, who's left? Oh, this guy's got a 9.3 out of 10 on the RAS scale. He might be high. And then there's a good chance they might pick him, which is so funny.
Not to get too personal with Chris Ballard, but I think if someone for his daughter showed up at the front door and said, I'm a great combine tester and I'm a Senior Bowl captain, can I have your daughter's hand? I think Chris Ballard would say yes.
Okay, let's go. Yeah. Mark, when I hired him back in the day, he had a great RAS score.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I cheated on that, so joke's on you.
Lighting up the Indy bubble back in the day.
All I'm saying is if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Oh, Mark, it was a heartbreaker on the All-Indiana parlay last night. Mike Woodson had a rant that probably described maybe how we feel about it this morning. Let's get to a morning check down. It's going to reverse because I feel like some people fell asleep, so they probably don't know what happened last night in Eugene. James Boyd, I thought it was a great basketball game. I thought it was back and forth.
Was up until the last 90 seconds.
Oregon had the big-ish lead kind of early, but then the whole second half was a really good back-and-forth game. Trey Galloway hits a huge three with about 2 minutes to go to give Indiana the lead. Indiana then has a great defensive trip down the floor. There's 2 on the shot clock. Oregon guard Jackson Shellstad gets it. Throws it up from about 30, 35 feet. Boom. That goes in. Indiana turns it over on the other end. They play the foul game. I thought maybe a hair early, to be honest with you. Oregon made all the free throws that they pretty much needed to. And all of a sudden, a spread that was 6.5 turned into a 9-point loss for Indiana.
Look at Mark.
It's a bad beat, Mark. It's a bad beat.
Disgusting.
Our parlay looked like the weather outside this morning, and Mike Woodson looked at the box score and had some words.
We had our chances, but listen, guys, in a physical game like this, it can't be 21-7. You gotta be kidding me. 21-7 on free throws. It's bullshit. It just can't be not in a physical game. They're a physical team, and it can't be that lopsided. It's impossible.
Did you think that was mostly with Ballo and Renew inside, or?
No, I'm just saying it can't be 21-7.
What was the ref's message to you?
Well, again, it's what it is. I can't go back and get it. Right. But in a physical game like that, where both teams are battling their asses off, you can't punish one team and put one team at the line for 21 times and the other team only get there 7 times. That's awful.
I mean, I felt like he should have just went out there and stiff-armed, the Oregon coach, Dan Altman, and said, this is for Miles Rice. But I think the late game execution ultimately got them in the end. But I feel it's frustration because that was right down to the wire, just a little bit short.
I thought some questionable officiating. And I'm usually not one that rants and raves about refs after a game. To nitpick, I mean, 21-7 is probably more like 15-7 because IU played the foul game in the final minute, but still, I didn't think they got a great whistle. And that's a missed opportunity. Boy, I cannot emphasize enough how important Saturday is. It might, honestly, Ohio State's got more at stake because it's a quad one road win for them, and they're on the bubble right there with Indiana. So just huge inside of Assembly Hall. I think it's a 3:45 tip, kind of a weird start time for the season finale. All right, Gamebridge Fieldhouse last night. Jeff Rickard, the Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton, outstanding, and it got a little edge of your seat there midway through the fourth quarter, but I thought Miles Turner and Aaron Nesmith, along with your star and Halliburton, were very, very good in closing out a much-needed win.
Yeah, they actually had a big lead, gave it up. In fact, trailed by one with a little over 6 minutes to go in the game, and that's when the Pacers really started to take over. Another unbelievable night, James Boyd, for Tyrese Halliburton. The 28 points, the 15 assists, 2 turnovers, and he was not happy getting 2 turnovers. He thought he only should have had 1 last night, too.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm a harsh grader, so I'll mark him down from an A+ performance to an A-.
An A++ to an A+, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. But again, when you see him playing at that level, it gives you that belief that they can be a special team. And like to Tyrese's point, he's peaking at the right time. We talked earlier about that, perhaps meaning health more than anything. Looks healthy, looks fluid. And I thought that the Aaron Nesmith and one there kind of got him back in the right mojo and obviously finish it off.
Everybody else playing well too.
Certainly. Always a good night when your student section runs out of the 3 signs. That's what happened for the paint crew last night in Mackey. 18 of them for the Boilers on their way to a 100-point, really second half beatdown of Rutgers there, 100-71. 18 threes, 4th most in school history. 7 for Braden Smith. 7 for Fletcher Lawyer. Just big picture for a second, guys. When the Smith-Lawyer era comes to an end, I assume, next year in Mackey or in West Lafayette, I think we're going to look back on kind of like this state of college basketball, and you're going to be hard-pressed to find 2 guards at a high major school end their careers with 100-some wins. Like, I just don't think that's going to be the norm. It maybe used to be the norm at times. Norm is an unfair way to say it, but like, obviously, you had more 4-year guards, in pre-transfer portal era, but they're just a rare duo. And obviously, Braden Smith is the All-American of it, but special times in West Lafayette. Those 2 guards, outstanding last night as they absolutely dominate Steve Pikiell's Scarlet Knights.
Yeah, one of the cool things I saw to kind of put a button on this was, obviously senior night for Caleb First and Matt Painter saying, Caleb First, he's 22. He's engaged to be married. He's been accepted to medical school, and he's the all-time winningest player in Purdue history. So that was a quote that Nathan Barrett shared from over on the Purdue beat for Indy Star, and I just thought that was, encompassing of not only the talent that Matt Painter tends to recruit down there in West Lafayette, but also the character of a person. And so, he was probably more excited than anybody to get that win last night, he being, Caleb First. I saw him play in high school at Black Hawk Christian, and these years later, he's going to medical school. I'm like, man, you must be one of God's favorites, man. Like, how?
And he stayed. A lot of guys in his position would have transferred, and he's been needed this season with, obviously, the Daniel Jacobson injury. All right, Butler in action tonight. It is senior night for them. Quite a few. Jameel Telfort, Pierre Brooks, Patrick McCaffrey, Andre Screen, so a lot for Thad Matta's bunch there. They've got Xavier, I guess you would call that, probably the lone Big East rivalry or rival that Butler does have. And IU Indy. Their season does come to an end last night. They were trying to make a run here to the Coliseum coming up next week. They lose at Wright State. Actually, we're leading Wright State at halftime, but Paul Casaro, very good first year considering where that program has been, but they lose last night in the first round of the Horizon League tournament. So Fort Wayne's still alive. They'll play tomorrow. I know John had Matthew Graves from Indiana State, of course, on yesterday. Indiana State and Evansville will try to also do the 4 games in 4 nights. So it's going to be difficult for us to get a mid-major rep in, I think, in the men's tournament. But Fort Wayne, Indiana State, Evansville, Ball State next week, Valpo a little bit. We'll see if all of them can make a magical run here upcoming.
All right, coming up in a moment, we'll continue to talk about the Colts and their week ahead and all the things they got to do to get that taken care of. Also, the Pacers neck and neck right now for the number 4 position with the Milwaukee Bucks. Teams will meet twice in the next week and a half. We'll tell you all about that next as we continue the Fan Morning Show here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. What we want are tournament bids for IU, maybe a nice little run for one of the mid-majors here that you were talking about, Kevin, and the Pacers to go back to the Eastern Conference and win it this year. That's what we want. That's all we want.
That's it, right?
I want an IU cover spread. How about that?
Could I throw in a few more while we're at it? Is this Santa here?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Let's go.
Can Tiger win the Masters for me?
Can Tiger get through?
Can Notre
2 or
Dame
3
win
rounds?
5 games in 5 days in the ACC tournament next week? Big one tonight. You guys want to come over? Notre Dame, Cal, 9 o'clock here in South Bend.
I'll bring the spinach dip.
I'll bring my boys. How's that?
Perfect.
Hey, real quick question for you, though. How crazy would it be? We saw what happened to Indiana State last year. Let's say they go on that four games and 4 nights run and they get it done. Would that cost a bid for somebody like Indiana?
Yeah, it is kind of funny. You know, last year in this market, if you were a pro-Indiana Stater wanting to get in, you were cheering against the Indianas of the world. And now this year, if you're an Indiana fan, you're cheering. Like, you want Drake, for example, to win the Missouri Valley. Like, you don't want any sort of Drake on the bubble talk. So we will probably talk about this more tomorrow and Friday, but I cannot stress enough how important Saturday is for Indiana. And honestly, it is probably more important for what you would do for the other team. So let's nerd out about this for a second. I believe if they beat Ohio State, that would count as a quad 2 home win. In the grand scheme of the resume, that doesn't impact you a whole lot for Indiana. If you lose, you give Ohio State, a team right there on the bubble, a quad 1 road win. So again, we're really nitpicking. Welcome to March 5th. That's what this time of year is kind of all about. But boy, Saturday at 3:45 in Assembly Hall, senior day for, Ballo, Galloway, Leal, and Goody and all them. But certainly it is a massive one for their bubble because you don't want to come here to Cambridge where success has been the furthest thing for Indiana in the Big Ten tournament and having to get more done. Honestly, they could play Oregon again in some of these tournament projections for the Big Ten tournament.
At least it wouldn't be at Oregon.
Sure.
James just got done with a great conversation with Stephen Holder, who covers the Colts and the NFL at ESPN and ESPN.com. Of the things that he said, what piqued your interest the most?
I think when he, mentioned the interest in Malachi Starks, I was like, okay, could they go defensive player at 14? I know, again, I do this every year. I've done it for a while now where the fan base gets attached to one player or one name. Last year it was Brock Bowers. This year it's Tyler Warren. And it's like, if they aren't there, what do you do? And I do think that Malachi Starks will fit a lot of the team needs, the safety out of Georgia. So that kind of piqued my interest for sure. And then also just a little tidbit on him, saying that Anthony's going to be dialed in, and he has to be, I think, to obviously go out there and prove, not only for this season that I'm the guy, but ideally I'm the guy that you should hit your future with, for years to come.
Guys, we're hurting here because of the Indiana parlay and how it was ripped out of our hearts last night. It's unbelievable.
Mark keeps refreshing, like maybe they missed the spread.
Like, we've gotten our ass kicked with it a few times this year, Mark. That we didn't deserve that last night.
That was just cruel.
Absolutely cruel. Indiana.
And we had to stay up late to watch it too.
That is maybe that's the ultimate kick in the. That's the John Cena, the Cody Rhodes right there.
Always those late free throws that get you on those things.
I mean, late up 1,
they
90
were
seconds
up 1
to go.
and they didn't score a single point the rest of the game.
When they did the first foul with minutes ago, I almost texted you and say, "Oh no," but I didn't want to, go there. You would be like, "Why are you speaking that juju into existence?"
Yeah.
But sure enough, that's how the final minute went there. So we are feeling it right here locally. Can you imagine being a Dallas Mavericks fan right now?
So Kyrie Irving out for the year. He could opt out of his deal in the summertime.
Yeah, player option for him. Yeah, 40-some million.
If that happens, then does Anthony Davis say, "Man, I'm out of here. You guys got to trade me"? Like, what is that? We were watching a franchise just that was in contention for an NBA championship within the past 12 months. We're watching them just implode before our very eyes, Kev. It's crazy.
I've never seen anything like it, but again, it makes you really appreciate the good times, and here in Indianapolis and Indiana, the Pacers are rolling, they're playing well, and I don't think you feel too sorry for the other teams around the league because of where you've been just a few years ago. I remember before the Tyrese Halliburton trade, it was rough. Herb Simon, I love my little team. The same day he said that, I was in Milwaukee, and they got smashed by a Milwaukee team without Giannis and without Chris Middleton, and I was thinking, this little team stinks. And then you look up now, they're in the mix. So you can't feel sorry for anybody else, man. They did that to themselves, I think, in Dallas.
And they're raising ticket prices too, Kevin.
I just It is utterly amazing how it has unfolded here in the last couple of weeks. We got the chant of the year from Mavericks fans. How can we forget that? I mean, the epic post-Luka trade that we got here.
They had a funeral for him, even though he's alive.
They literally had a funeral for him. They were carrying caskets outside of the American Airlines Center.
I love how ridiculous fans are.
Mark, do we have this chant audio here?
It's the best. It was going on there, yeah.
Oh,
just absolutely epic from Mavericks fans. And then how it has unfolded since. I mean, the Kyrie ACL. I mean, Anthony Davis, let's look at his injury situation right now.
Does he play for the rest of the year,
No.
do you think?
I wouldn't. I mean, at this point, aren't you tanking?
Yeah. And getting healthy at the same time.
That's how you have to view it. So,
And seeing your ticket prices go way up.
Yeah, all of it. It's just...
aren't you happy to just be living in Indiana? Like,
it's the best place to be.
It's good, man.
I've learned the hard way. It's the best place to be, Kev.
When the tickets went up for the Fever, it's because you got a show out there, so...
Brutal time for the Mavericks here. Again, Pacers now, they're on the road, 6 of 7 on the road. We talked about it next week. They'll have 2 big ones here with the Bucks. I don't want to act like Houston is a lottery team. You know, sometimes you get these games 82 nights out of the year and you just point to them as a lottery team. But I thought, considering no Fred VanVleet, second night of a back-to-back, this is your lone home game here for the most part in about a 2-week stretch. Your only home game in the 6 of 7 on the road is Milwaukee. I thought it was just really important for the Pacers to take care of business. And obviously, things got real dicey there midway through the fourth, but they made the plays the rest of the way.
All right, coming up in a moment, we'll continue to talk about basketball statewide at all levels here in the state of Indiana. Get your reactions and feedback on things you've heard from Stephen Holder and other Colts experts throughout the week here as we get ready for free agency. It's all straight ahead here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
We're back, Fan Morning Show. Stephen Holder, that podcast will be up shortly. I did have to share this. Some people have asked me here the last couple of days, hey, how's it, really enjoy hearing James Boyd. How's it working? How's it working out, et cetera. So I'm like, it's great, Smart dude, variety of takes, passionate. But
what? What happened?
But
what happened?
I must say, there's something James Boyd said earlier this week that reminded me of my children. And now, my daughter will turn 5 here in a couple months. My son is 2.5. And all of a sudden, we got discussing, I don't know, grocery maybe, or how it got onto this topic. And James Boyd point blank looks at me and is like, dude, I love Dino Nuggets so much.
I do.
And he was doubling down on that.
Your freezer and my freezer right now, James Boyd, Dino Nugget.
It is, look, I'm not.
Are we going multiple nights a week? We going just one night a week?
It's like one night a week when I'm being lazy. Right. I usually try to cook something, eat something green, and I can.
Like, what's green for you?
Like green Skittle.
Celery. No,
celery.
It could be celery. It could be broccoli. It could be eat something green. And I say that with some oomph because this is the same conversation I have with my dad every day because he does not eat very many greens. And so Dino Nuggets is usually just when I'm being lazy. And it's once a week, and it is a good eat. It's great, man. Look, you don't want to lose your childlike innocence and the joy you have eating Dino Nuggets as you age. So
now, tell me, you're playing with. Are you playing with them? Are we doing like T-Rex is doing this?
I'm not playing with them, but look, never rule it out. Never rule it out. My mom always says I float through life and I should grow up, but I'm like, hey, man, I told her at this point, you should have raised me better.
I will say this: after one of Rosie's soccer games last year, one of the parents is bringing snacks, and all the kids run over there, and obviously it's the highlight of the game for all these kids. And she pulls the snacks out of the bag, and they got Dunkaroos.
Oh,
have you guys dabbled in the Dunkaroo?
I was like, Mark, you like
that.
When those went away, I was very sad, and then when they came back, I was like,
boy, I will tell you what, man, I've never wanted some of our kids on the team to cry more and run away and hopefully not get their snack. And hopefully I could just, hey, coach, why don't you take one here?
Yeah.
I'm like, Dunkaroos?
You could go get them.
That was my childhood. Yeah, but
it hits different when someone else. Yeah,
I know.
It hits different when somebody else kind of.
So the dinos are a little different in my house. My boys are 15, almost one's about to be 17 in 2 weeks here. All of a sudden, one day they didn't want the dinos anymore. They were too grown up.
Oh man, that sounds like an emotional moment in the Rickard household.
They were like, no, I'm good.
Like, Dad, I don't want to hold your hand anymore.
My oldest ate them all day, every day. He loved chicken nuggets, but he didn't want the Dino Nuggets anymore.
You tell him.
He just wanted the banquet
all right,
after
that this is the backbone of being a young person, okay? You won't want them until you're living
nutrition.
Until you're living on your own, and you're like, you know what? What's a quick dinner? What is a quick dinner? When
this is the food pyramid right here.
The other thing that you might find as your kids get older is you just want them to eat something. I have kids that it's hard to get them to eat things. Just eat. I don't know if you guys have that problem or not.
Look, I know this is a G-rated show. I can't get to, but if we didn't eat, we would. I would say
we had a few dumps from Mike Woodson earlier in the show.
I know, but I'm just saying, if I didn't eat growing up, there was not much discussion of not eating. Going forward, it was very much.
We sat at the table until we did.
A whole lot of eating and a very awful transition by myself from Alex Pillow over the weekend. You guys see the numbers from the IndyCar opener, TV rating wise?
I have not seen those.
Pretty impressive here. 1.4 million. Again, this is a Fox standalone noon from that street race in St. Pete. I remember when they made this announcement last year, we had this discussion of, you just get all these races simply on Fox. And I think golf benefits from this. For example, for the most part, and again, I know it's an older generation, but they know, golf on Sunday is either going to be on NBC or CBS, 2 or 3 o'clock. Yes, the times are going to change for some of these race times, but the fact that you now can ingrain into your audience again, every single IndyCar race is going to be on Fox. That is much easier than saying, wait, is it Peacock today? Is this one of those USA Network ones? Is this NBC Sports when that station did exist? So, strong numbers. That was the most in the St. Pete race in a long, long time. Last year, for example, under 1 million. So 1.4 this year. Last year, St. Pete over on NBC, 975,000.
And Kevin, not only is the standalone a big piece of it, but how about the way that Fox Sports has leaned into the IndyCar series?
Oh, for sure.
Those incredibly well done terrific spots that they had during the Super Bowl. They've continued to pop up here and there throughout, but they are all in on Fox on Sundays.
Yeah, I was talking to Ed Carpenter about that a couple weeks ago. He's like, dude, they're not messing around. So yeah, certainly.
Question for you all, because as you know, I'm not super into IndyCar and I'm trying to learn more, but Alex Palou, I believe back-to-back points winner in IndyCar series, starts off, really well in St. Pete. What are we witnessing with him in particular? Like, can you contextualize for someone who might not be as well versed?
He was
in the racing
on
world?
yesterday. If you want to go back and find it on the website at 1075thefan.com, he was on yesterday with Jay Query, and it was a fascinating conversation. And it was a nice job by Eddie Garrison, too, coming out with all he does is win, win, win.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I recognize that.
I think 13 wins for him now, but just in the last 2 years. Is he the guy that now just dominates week to week with consistency, Kev?
James, I'm trying to put it into another sport of Palou. It's a he got the lead on Sunday. I'm sitting there on the couch and I'm like, well, time to go do something else. I know how this one's going to end.
Oh man, okay.
And again, behind him was Dixon and Newgarden. I mean, two of the greats all time. Period. Certainly Dixon and obviously Joseph Newgarden well on his way. So I don't know. Selfishly, I might have had a financial stake in the guys behind Alex.
You've had a rough week then.
Hasn't been a great one, but it's a compliment, but he's just boringly good. I mean, that's how I would describe it. It's just death, taxes, and Palou. And I get that the 500 is, and he hasn't had, I don't think Lady Luck's been on his side, and we'll see when May rolls around, but he is just so damn consistent. And when he got that lead on Sunday, I was like, all right, I have probably seen enough from this. So I don't know, Mahomes, that was the name that immediately popped into my head, but you can't go there yet because the Super Bowl, obviously, the Indy 500 is still needed. But 2 weeks from now, out in Thermal for them. So a little Palm Springs action next up on the IndyCar circuit.
He did come up with the win, but that last lap was pretty fun to watch.
Well, Dixon passed Newgarden. I think that was more fuel. But, yeah, I mean, for the most part, I don't think you ever really seriously threaten Palou there. So IndyCar over the weekend. Last night up in West Lafayette, 100 for Purdue, 18 3-pointers. Is Braden Smith your Big Ten Player of the Year?
He had that tough little spot there when they were losing some games, but he's bounced right back, and he certainly, I don't know, who else would you put up there with him right now?
I feel like the teams, and James, feel free to chime in, I feel like the teams up there are very balanced. Both the Michigan teams, I don't necessarily view them as having one superior player. So I wouldn't necessarily go there. I mean, again, maybe if we paid more attention to it, I do think Jackson Shelstad, the shot he hit last night, the shot he hit at Wisconsin a couple weeks ago, I think he has had an all Big Ten first team. But yeah, unless I'm missing someone, I think early on in the year you had the kid whose name I can't pronounce, James, at your school, had a really strong season. I don't know. Danny Wolf. I don't know who else you would go. I mean, honestly, some people would say Trey Kaufman-Renn is a really strong candidate with Braden Smith. But winning and individual success, I don't know if there's another player that I would put up there.
Yeah, I'd probably put Braden Smith up there. And honestly, I think he's pushing for, I would have said before the rough patch there, first team All-American, but I do think he's at least second team All-American. He's that good of a player. And I think, I was talking to some guys last night at Carmel when I was watching the high school game because you know how it is. I'm very sharing, Jeff. So when the game's on my phone, we got 3 guys huddled around my phone, or we're waiting for the other game to start up, the second night of the games. And so it was, to hear them talk about Braden Smith, they're like, hey, I watched this guy in this sectional.
Oh, what he did in Sectional 8 his senior year, I mean, it was unbelievable what he did in that sectional, which you were there front row last night, James. I mean, it's not easy to win 3 in that sectional.
It's the best sectional in the state. And then to hear those people who, again, they were super high on Braden Smith before the rest of the world was, obviously, and they're saying, I didn't even think he was going to be this good and this, this consistent. I mean, you look at his career, he's going to go down as an all-time great, not only at Purdue, but in the Big Ten. So I do think that he is the front runner for Big Ten Player of the Year, which will be, again, just an incredible feat considering who was the Big Ten Player of the Year the last couple years in Zach Edey. So, I mean, respect.
Only other name I'd throw out, John Tanji from Wisconsin. Again,
That's
I think
fair.
He's had a really nice season. But, yeah, to James's point, for those out there that say, oh, Braden Smith, he just feasted off Zach Edey. They're
now
not
he's feasting.
saying that this season.
All right, coming up in a moment, the Colts are set for free agency and a quarterback acquisition for competition or just to be the quarterback. We'll talk about that next. KB, JB, and Jeff, it's the Fan Morning Show, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Learning a lot about the nutritional habits of one James Boyd this morning. Kevin, you want to grade that at all? Listen to the rundown here?
Oh, he would have a seat certainly at the Bowen family table. That's an understatement. Right between Rosie and Max, James Boyd, eating their scraps here. Dino Nuggets, huge fan. Certainly now, you and I both could agree on this. Capri Suns, baby.
Everybody likes Capri Sun, don't they?
The red berry. I would drink a whole box and do a dynasty mode in NCAA football like 03 back in the day. Wouldn't appear from the basement for hours.
I was going to say, it was one of those 18-hour runs for you there?
Oh, it was a hell of a run.
Life was sweet back then, man. And so, like I said, you got to get your slice every now and then. Got to get a little slice of life.
I was doing the pee dance as a big third down against my arch rival here to try and, get into the bowl game here. As I, red berry Capri Sun number 7.
Telling yourself, not now.
That I've downed.
I remember we would, you get to a point in the game where you haven't reached the level where you can save and stay there. So me and my cousins had a PS2. We would leave it on, and go to church and come back and hope that the thing hadn't exploded. But
what was your go-to play?
The Warriors. We played the Warriors video game. I don't know those out there, the Warriors movie, come out to play. Yeah. The game itself was so violent. I probably shouldn't have been playing it at the age that I was. But that was fun. Midnight Club, Dub Edition, obviously Madden and NBA Live and 2K and all those games. Like I said, PS2 was my last system. And then I wanted to be cool and dress better. So my parents clothes or games. And I got clothes. And I phased out, man. I phased out.
James has got a Chris Ballard question that I hope I'm not, revealing too much here. But I do want to get to that here in just a second. But I mentioned to you guys yesterday, I would look into re-signing Dayo Dangbo, I think more than maybe most. Tom Pelissero, NFL Network, just put out a list of under-the-radar free agents that could get a big payday. He put a Dangbo on that list. He threw out this stat. Dangbo is one of just 6 players in the NFL over the last 2 years with over 30 quarterback hits, but fewer than 20 starts. So, despite not a ton of playing time, or certainly not a starter, he's still, and quarterback hits, I always think is a very good indicator of how consistent of a pressure are you. Obviously, we all go to sacks, but again, sacks, to me, just disrupt timing. Sure, the sack is great, and that's ultimately what you want, but I want that quarterback to be disrupt. Miles Turner had so many of these plays last night. The blocks we go to with Miles so often, but you know how many plays you really have to watch the game to truly sense Miles' disruption? Now, again, the NFL has adopted that, and they have quarterback hits in here as a stat on that, but boy, Dayo come next week. And again, they think, a deal here, Pelissero says, between 16 to 20 million, 25 years old. Again, he hasn't missed a game in 3 years. He's probably the Colt, James, that I would think will garner the biggest payday. I would say he'll garner a bigger payday than Will Fries.
I would argue that as well. I mean, he plays a more premium position, being a defensive end versus being a right guard. But again, everything you said, I'm nodding my head. Yep. Colt should do this. Yep. And then you said the price, and I was like,
Yeah, but at 25, and you're looking for help in that particular area, you go back to what Kevin was talking about, and I've always thought this too, where it comes to hurries or hits or whatever. Kevin, I think pressures, that's what leads to turnovers. Yeah. That's what leads to interceptions. That's what leads to incompletions on 3rd and 8.
Exactly. That's it. I don't know if there's a stat. I could probably look this up, but I didn't feel like under Gus Bradley the Colts got off the field in a very efficient manner. 3rd and 8, to your point, here's an incompletion. Again, it's not a wow play.
But you're off the field.
But boom, it's a punt. So a Dangbo, I think, will really be one to watch next week. James Wood, if you don't mind, I thought the break conversation, primarily between you and Jeff Rickard, I was listening a whole lot. Some Chris Ballard quarterback-related chatter. You already have a question to add to the Chris Ballard Q&A list whenever you do chat with him again.
Number one on that list of questions that I'll have, hopefully I'll be able to ask this very shortly when we go out to owners' meetings in Florida. When you say open competition, do you mean that Anthony will have to split reps? Because, I mean, that's what it is on paper. And then that leads me to my next question. How does that help him? Does that hold him back more than it pushes him forward, splitting reps again? Again, he hasn't really split reps since his rookie year with Gardner Minshew, and they decided that he was the guy pretty quickly thereon. Up with one quarter of the Buffalo preseason opener, and then hey, he's your starter. So I'm curious to hear you all's thoughts on how that will affect his development when we know health is a factor, accuracy is a factor, all these things like reps. I mean, we're saying the same thing we said 2 years ago when he got drafted. He needs reps.
So here's the thing, and this is why it's going to be so interesting about who they can get to come here. Because I always felt that what Chris Ballard was saying at the Combine when he talks about wanting competition and wanting all those things, to me, he was sending a message to Anthony Richardson as, hey, I need you in the film room constantly. I need you working on your footwork. I need you working on these things. I need you to instinctively be the first guy in and the last guy out. Those are the things that I'm expecting from you. And so what quarterback do you get that comes in that really, truly takes those reps away and could viably be a starting quarterback if he doesn't grow? But the other side of that coin, Kevin, is for him to grow in this first really healthy, full-on off season, he's got to get all those reps, I would think, especially with you're going to have somewhat of a rebuilt offensive line, we think, right?
I think it's a really good point, James, you just brought up, and like what matters more this offseason? Okay, quarterback-wise, what matters more? Real competition or real reps for Anthony Richardson's first ever healthy NFL offseason? And if I had to pick one or the other, real competition or the real reps for a guy that has to make fundamental changes to his game, I would opt for the latter. To me, the competition, yeah, it sounds good, but ultimately it's just kind of a kick in the ass. Or at least that's the thought process, right? That's kind of how you're viewing it.
That's how I took it.
Yeah. Whereas the real reps coming off of his first healthy offseason, I view that as he is making fundamental changes. We heard Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard say that last week. There are specific things he needs to change. James, you mentioned it, Stephen Holder, when we had him on last hour. Chris Hess, this, whatever, the great fundamental guru. This is Josh Allen's words that really helped shift Josh Allen's accuracy numbers. He is working with Richardson. Okay, if that's the case, then you have some tangible things. He needs every rep is precious. In an offseason that continues to shrink from a rep standpoint, preseason playing time, I think should be abundant for Anthony Richardson because you watch training camp every practice just like I did last year, James. You walked away from training camp. You didn't think anything that alarming from Richardson.
No.
65%. Sure, Julian Blackmon made a heroic interception or two, and that was really it. So, to me, has he earned the right to totally discredit the competition notion? No, he has not. Let me be clear on that. But if it's one or the other, splitting reps with Jameis Winston every other day or Marcus Mariota every other day, or a commitment to saying, all right, we drafted you 4th overall. You've had ups and downs. It hasn't gone swimmingly well, but here's your first healthy NFL offseason. Here are 2 or 3 things that we're fundamentally changing about how you throw the football. Let's commit every single offseason rep to you with the starters and see what happens. If I had to pick one or the other, I'm picking that.
Agreed. I mean, it just goes back to how weird of an instance this is because there's so many variables that you can look at and say, if this had happened, if this didn't happen, we'll be looking at a different situation. I mean, and the biggest thing is availability. And when you just don't have the time on task, it's hard to really gauge, at least in my opinion, how much he can grow from this. I mean, what is it, 15 games played through his first 2 seasons? He's missed 17 due to injury, 2 more because he was benched. How do you kind of justify splitting reps or, bringing in an open competition or all these things if you still want him to kind of be your guy? I kind of look at it like you sink or swim with him.
Right.
And there it seems to me that they're trying to find this, perhaps there's a life raft out there. Perhaps there's this where we can kind of, doggy paddle and keep things afloat. But that's the problem here in Indianapolis. They haven't been a bad team. I mean, the bad season was 2022 for various reasons. But historically speaking, they really haven't been just a horrible team. It's we haven't been good enough to be a really real team. You know what I'm saying, Jeff? It's confounding because it's frustrating for Colts fans because they go through this song and dance every year of we'll be just good enough to kind of get close to the playoffs or perhaps break our heart, but not bad enough to really reset things.
Yeah, and I also think at the end of the day, he's your guy or he isn't your guy. And if you go around splitting reps and kind of slowing the progression of his career when you need him the most. He's your guy or he isn't at this point in time. Don't you think, Kev?
Well, right. But I do think, again, one commitment to a healthy offseason is fine. Like, are you really never going to commit to a healthy offseason with him? You know, and part of that is like, I guess it comes with drafting the guy 4th overall. Has he earned it? No. But when you do draft a guy 4th overall, not to mention the dude with all this inexperience. And again, look at the quarterbacks that have had young success here lately. They all played a ton in college. Bo Nix and Jane Daniels and C.J. Stroud, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, 1 week from today, new league year will begin. We'll see if anything trickles out this week. Basically, this week for the NFL, now that the franchise tag deadline is over, only 2 tags yesterday, the fewest we've seen in the league in 20 years. This week is usually about like restructuring of deals, again, clearing up cap space. That's never really been the Colts' MO. We'll keep an eye on that, and then any re-signings. Again, even in past years, I don't think the Colts have done a lot of early re-signings. We'll see if anybody falls into that boat.
Yeah, and I think that's just to let guys test their market and see if they price themselves out of what you're willing to pay.
Mark, do you think we're done with all Indiana parlays?
No. We keep persevering.
4th time is the charm?
Yeah. We ride or die. We've died a couple times, but we'll get resuscitated.
Thinking maybe like next year we might have, or excuse me, next week we might have like a day in the Big Ten tournament where like Indiana and Purdue both play.
Mm-hmm.
So you think that's when we cook one up again?
Maybe we'll just when Woodson's time at IU ends, we'll get on the right track of things. But for now, we're going to keep stabbing away at it.
Do you think the final Mike Woodson press conference will include questions and answers on like why he is leaving?
No.
They
had an opportunity already, and they never took it.
I mean, James, you're probably the perfect person to ask, just because, like, you know, these press conference settings at end of seasons can get like weird at times when you're covering uncertain situations. You know, if I am an IU beat reporter, there's probably a little bit of like, well, you know, do you want to be in the locker room to ask whatever Malik Renew about his future, or you know, just other players in the program? But also, we still have yet to get clarity on the Woodson thing. I mean, outside of him being like, yeah, you guys know I'm not going to be here next year. There's been none of that. And again, maybe fans don't care. Maybe fans are just like, hey, whenever it's over, move on.
I think some of it depends on how they finish their season, because when this announcement first came out, they had not been playing well at all. They were in the middle of the worst part of the entire schedule and probably of the whole Woodson era. People were on him. They were losing. You were getting articles every day. People were talking about it here on the radio. But if they finish on a nice little high note, get a win or two in the tournament and play well, and who knows, maybe whether they go to Dayton or get a first-round tournament again, don't you think that will impact the tone of any final words that he might have, Kev?
I still think it's going to be weird. Like, you know, I know he went to Kev, but just jump in and be selfish. I mean, I still think it's going to be weird.
Yes, agreed.
And when they inevitably lose, it's still not a good mood because you played well before that last loss. And so to answer your point or question, Kevin, I'd be the jerk, at least asking Mike Woodson
it's not a
about
jerk,
his future.
It's
a
fair question.
I say that from like, you know, I think
the press release had zero quote from him.
Yeah,
they've been told not to ask questions about it.
No, I say that with the sense of like, I know there's some fans out there that are like, hey, time and place, but I mean, I've done this long enough now that sometimes that final, like the game ends, season ends, that final press conference could be the last time he's in front of a camera or in front of a mic. And so it's not like the NFL, where the NFL, yeah, there's times where I will ask at the end of the season, hey, what do you think about next season? But we know they all have exit interviews tomorrow or the day after where they're kind of decompressed a little bit. It's more of an appropriate setting, so to speak. But college is not like that. It's kind of the Wild Wild West where teams will just make up whatever really media policies they want. And if that's the case, if this is the last time I might see you, brother, we don't care about this random loss, you know, that we won't remember, you know, down the line. We're going to ask you about leaving and why you did it.
Yeah, if you're a 10 seed in the tournament and you lose to whatever 7 seed, insert your Big 12 or SEC school, how much do you care about it? I will say this about Indiana last night. Obviously, it was a missed opportunity. For those that missed it, I thought they played pretty well in the second half. And I think in general, you probably can walk away and be like, boy, that was and I hate to play this game, but like that was a pretty impressive road effort. I think it was a nice effort on the road, I guess is maybe how I would better say it. They're not in a position, though, to really celebrate that stuff because like they just need, they still need one more thing to really, I think, cement their bid and then avoid the chaos. But I did think on the road, don't think of the 9-point loss necessarily. I mean, they were certainly I mean, they were leading with 1:30 to go, and a kid throws in a 30-footer.
Yeah, we were talking to Mark about the bad beat. You have a 1-point lead, 1.5 to go. You get down to 2 seconds on the shot clock on defense, and the guy throws one up from 30, 35 feet.
This is not the Kohl Center. This is not the Bahamas. This is not, some of these. We've gotten to these moments where Indiana plays quality opponents away from home, and you can stop watching the game at the under 8 media timeout the first half. That was not last night.
No.
So, again, I think I just bring that up because I think it's just kind of an accurate way to look at the game. I don't want to play the whole like, oh wow, are you into moral victories? No, I mean you have a $5 million roster. You shouldn't be on the bubble here come March, but that's the reality of where the season is at. And obviously Saturday is going to be massive in Bloomington with Ohio State coming to town.
I will say that obviously no moral victories, but it adds more pressure and more eyeballs to the game on Saturday, which I was going to watch either way. But if you like drama, tune in. I mean,
and Ohio State won a double OT last night.
I know. So we're getting to that time of the year again. It's March. It's going to get a little crazy, but I do think that if you play with that level of detail, attention, most of the time you'll come out on top. Obviously, there's some margins there you want to be better at, but I thought the shot making overall from the team was really impressive, considering that it was a collective effort. I mean, you had Mbako making a couple big shots. Miles Rice made some big shots. Obviously, Trey Galloway with that weird, like, running floater thing.
At times, I don't know if it's a floater or if it's a lob.
I don't think Ballo knows.
Ask Fisher what does Fisher call that thing?
I mean, literally, he throws it up, and I'm thinking, do you think it's going to go in, or do you think it's going to be a lob?
I think Ballo got confused a couple times last night.
Yeah.
And it was a lob, and then went in. But
there was one I thought it was going to be a goaltend.
Yeah, but I've been really impressed with Trey Galloway as of late, too, just the way he ran the show. I know he had the turnover late, but again, that's the sort of effort, the attention to detail you want to see. And, a few bounces here or there, it goes your way. But you have one more opportunity, I think, to solidify yourself and not need the help of other people to get into the tournament if you handle business against Ohio State. You're at home. They're looking to knock you off. It'll be a huge win for them as well, so the stakes are high. And to me, it's like an unofficial March Madness tournament game. You either enter or you're out, either team, depending on this type of atmosphere, this type of win. So it'll be rocking down there at Assembly Hall, I'm sure.
Let me throw this at you Colts-wise here. This is from Josh. This gets back to the conversation we had kind of earlier in the 9 o'clock segment. Josh goes, wasn't the whole thing the second half of last season about Anthony Richardson hasn't had a legit threat behind him to push him, and that they've given him every opportunity, yet they had to bench him as a wake-up call? Josh says here, he puts coddled in quotes. Coddled was the word used, so why is competition bad now? I've got some thoughts, but your guys' reaction.
I just go back to what Chris Ballard said. I think they're trying to light the fire under him as much as anything, because I don't think it does him a ton of good, as we've been talking about. If you're healthy and you're going through all these off-season drills and you're changing your mechanics and you're trying to get everything down, and for the first time you come in as truly you feel a prepared NFL quarterback to get into the season, if all of a sudden you bring in competition and you're only going to get half the reps, I don't think that does him any good. I understand wanting to light the fire underneath him, James, but it doesn't help him he's got to get reps at this point in time. He's got to.
Yeah, but I understand the frustration of, like, you all have kind of been stringing him along. I think when you talk about coddled, the biggest thing I think of, Kevin, is you had to bench him to get his attention. Like, they have never really answered this, and they probably never will. But for it to even get to that point of where you had to bench your number 4 pick because he wasn't focused enough, and there perhaps there's other things involved, but I mean, that's the gist. That's the like, what? And so I understand when it comes to that part of it, the frustration, and maybe he's been coddled and things like that, but I think he was very humbled after he got benched. And to your point, Jeff, I know some people might not understand this, and I'll kind of break it down real quick. This is his first offseason that he's been healthy. And I know people were like, well, he was healthy last offseason because he got hurt early in the year and he was fine. He wasn't fine. I mean, the dude could not run because the vibrations from his foot up through his body to his shoulder would have messed up his actual recovery. So it threw me for a loop, too, because I was talking to some people about this. And I was like, oh, man, I thought all that time he could work on his footwork. He could be moving around. They were like, no, when you're 250 and 6'4", and I don't know anything about, I didn't pay attention that much in physics class or science class, but when you put some force down on concrete or grass, it goes back up through your body, and it can mess with whatever you're recovering, even if it's just your arm. And so he was not able to be fully cleared until about training camp. I mean, you were there, Kevin, that day at OTAs when he said he didn't throw because he was a little sore. Everyone was like,
day,
huh?
Right? Yeah.
Like, what the heck? So
he was just beginning to throw this time last year, right? Like,
exactly.
It was like the last week of February, I felt like, when he started. I certainly hear Josh's point, and this is what makes the Richardson thing so complicated. He needs both. He needs the kick in the ass, and he needs all the reps. And you just can't do both. And so I am, by all means, go out there and sign someone that you feel, whatever, creates a little bit of and again, creates competition that's the juicy phrase. Ultimately, you can also look at it from what Richardson played, or I think was healthy for 13 games last year. Okay, if he's healthy for 13 games this year, let's say the Colts go 8-5. He's 8-7 all time as a starter. Let's say they go 8-5. Those other 4 games are really going to matter.
You can't go 1-3 in those.
You go
right
1-3,
back where you started.
and you're back in the purgatory. You go 3-1, and you might be winning the division. So, if I had to pick one or the other, though, and that's kind of the point I was trying to make earlier, Josh. If I had to pick kick in the ass or actual reps, considering he needs a fundamental change of how accurate he is as a thrower, that's the one that I'm picking. And you just hope that general maturation also occurs. And I'm probably, honestly, going more off of age and wake-up call and, oh my gosh, now this is the last season where I play under the contract I'm at, and if I do well this offseason, then my contract goes up like that. Like, I think you hope some of the other things, not as tangible as all the reps to make fundamental improvements, you hope that that's there.
Real quickly, and maybe we'll get back into it in a minute, but when you look at the greats, whether it's Manning, whether it's Brady, whether it's Patrick Mahomes now, or Lamar Jackson, or Josh Allen, you get the sense that these guys eat, breathe, live, love football. Do we get that sense from Anthony Richardson?
There's definitely moments that it's a fair question to raise. Certainly. And the Monday through Saturday standard is a high standard, especially for that position, especially when you wear the C on the chest. And clearly last year, they didn't live up to it. Let's hit a morning check down with certainly some words and maybe some bleeps from the IU basketball coach. Let's start with our winners from Tuesday night. Gamebridge Fieldhouse would be where we stop first. Tyrese Halliburton playing like an all-NBA or first-teamer, if I must say so, here since the All-Star break. He was outstanding again last night as a scorer, as an assist man, and as one that doesn't turn it over a whole lot. It was a shaky moment or two there in the fourth quarter, but I thought Miles Turner, Aaron Nesmith, big time when Houston did take the lead after the Dylan Brooks 3. The Pacers get it done, and now they start 6 of 7 here on the road as we will transition to a whole lot of Big Ten basketball inside of Gamebridge Fieldhouse.
I'm with it. I mean, the women's tournament is coming to town.
Starts today, right, women? I think they do.
I believe so.
Yeah, when we got a 15-team tournament, yeah.
And what IU tomorrow against Oregon, so it's going to be fun. And obviously, you have one of the biggest stars in the sport in Juju Watkins, and we know what Caitlin Clark did on this platform last year, so I will continue to advocate for Indianapolis to host these kind of events.
They should have it all the time.
8 games at Gamebridge Fieldhouse in 31 days. Not a lot for the Pacers, but they get a win last night. 100 for the Boilers. Lawyer, I think, just hit another 3. I think Braden just hit another 3. Hell, I think Sha'Carri Harris might have just hit another 3. 18 in total, the 4th most in school history. They were on that 18 number for a while there late. I thought they were going to get
50% for the night from 3 with as many as they
18
took.
18 to 36. Yeah, from behind the arc. So they take care of business of Rutgers, 171. Season finale now coming up on Friday against Illinois. That is your Fox 8 o'clock game. And, of course, out in Eugene last night, we mentioned it to lead off this morning checkdown. Mike Woodson not too pleased with the officiating. The game really just got away from Indiana in the final 90 seconds. Galloway hits a huge 3 with about 2 minutes to go. Indiana comes down, has what looks to be a great defensive possession, and Jackson Shellstad hits a 3 with about 2 on the shot clock from about 30 feet. Galloway then turned it over on the other end. In Oregon, did all the free throw things that they needed to do.
You just hurt Mark very badly again.
I'm sorry, Mark.
No.
We have to.
I'm happy. I'm seeing this Ian Rappaport thing that says the Bears are trading for All-Pro Joe Tooney from the Chiefs.
Really?
So that's solid.
Well, they've had a lot of offensive line activity here this offseason.
I like it.
Well, speaking of the free throws, to go back to Indiana, the bleeps were abound for Mike Woodson postgame.
We had our chances, but listen, guys, in a physical game like this, it can't be 21-7. You gotta be kidding me. 21-7 on free throws. It's bullshit. It just can't be not in a physical game. They're a physical team, and it can't be that lopsided. It's impossible.
Did you think that was mostly with Ballo and Renew inside, or?
No, I'm just saying it can't be 21-7.
What was the ref's message to you?
Well, again, it's what it is. I can't go back and get it.
Right.
But in a physical game like that, where both teams are battling their asses off, you can't punish one team and put one team at the line for 21 times and the other team only get there 7 times. That's awful.
Some fire in the eyes of Mike Woodson.
We
Post-game
also
in
see
Eugene
that
last night.
when you're on the road all too often, though, too. And to your point, it's really more like 15-7 because of the late free throws and stopping and things like that. But you got to come. Don't you figure you're going to get a little bit of a raw deal on the road?
See, this is why I'm going to push back on both of y'all. When I'm making my argument for the refs not being on my side, I don't want to hear none of that, oh, you fouled at the end. No. Shut up
You
with that.
want to hear legit facts?
No,
you want to hear?
Yeah, shut up with that additional context. Let me be a hater, in peace. But no, to your
Jeff
point.
Cake and Charlie Duffy aren't saying that to Mike Woodson before he goes on his rant.
Exactly. Like, hold on, brother. But I, to his point, I do think that there were some questionable calls there. But ultimately, I mean, when the guy hits a 30-footer and you play great defense for 33 seconds of the shot clock or 27 seconds of the shot clock, or whatever, no, it's 30 seconds now. I mean, you kind of have to tip your cap. And it wasn't even just like it wasn't a lucky shot. He shot
it was
like
squared
it was
up.
a jumper.
He ripped the net.
Yeah, so I mean, again, that one hurt, and I remember tweeting out, pain was all I tweeted because that's what they, not Pacers fans, IU fans were in last night.
Hinkle tonight's Butler Xavier, senior nights, Patrick McCaffrey, Jameel Telfort, Pierre Brooks, Andre Screen. Xavier squarely on the bubble, so important for Xavier to get it done. We'll see if Butler can drum up a little bit of Hinkle action here in a season certainly to forget for Thad Matta and company. All right, on the other side, Mark Dykton seems happy. I think he's texting his Bears group text as we speak. We'll explain more on the other side. A quiet Wednesday here from a local standpoint. Obviously, sectional action will again be tonight. You will have Butler and Xavier up at Hinkle, 7 o'clock. We are getting a little bit closer, though, to the start of free agency. Mark Dykton was a little giddy last segment out of nowhere. I got nervous that something had popped up on his feed that maybe wasn't safe for work. But the Chicago Bears, Mark Dykton, they're not messing around with Caleb Williams' protection, correct?
No, that was one of the glaring needs in the offseason, and, mock drafts are showing that the Bears should take an offensive lineman. Well, they've made 2 trades ahead of free agency. Made a deal yesterday with the Rams for Jonah Jackson, who worked with Ben Johnson in Detroit, and now they have apparently locked up all-pro guard Joe Thuney from the Kansas City Chiefs for a 2026 4th-round pick. So they're making moves. I like it a lot. Now I'm curious to see what that means for their draft strategy going forward, but I like the 2 moves they've made so far.
Yeah, one thing about him, too, he's been in New England prior to Kansas City, so certainly his history there from a winning standpoint. And this gets back to a discussion we had, earlier in the week or even last week when, you see some of these rookie contract teams and what they do, they know that they're in a favorable cap situation right now. So now is the time to do things that you probably won't be able to do. First off, you got to get it right. So you're going to want to make sure you maybe overdo it to a degree so you don't sit there and say, man, if we just would have gave Caleb Williams more, it could have played out this way. So that's interesting, Mark. And James, I'll throw this your way. Let's play now Colt implications. Some might see this and say, well, it's got nothing to do with the Colts. Kansas City did franchise tag Trey Smith. That was one of the 2 tags we saw. And I believe you guys on The Athletic had this. You guys had ranked Will Fry as the top guard in free agency here in 2025. So when you're looking at a payday upcoming for Will Fries off of a broken leg in early October, I know there are some quality guards, I think, in this year's free agency class, but some are pegging Will Fries to have quite the payday.
Yeah, honestly, as crazy as it sounds, it's probably better to break your leg than to tear your Achilles or tear your ACL. Bones tend to heal better. Not a doctor, but that's usually the case. And no, I mean, I was just on talking to some buddies in Chicago, quite frankly, about Will Fries, and they were like, "Hey, I feel like it's you. All these teams are sniffing around really good players. Like, how much do you love Indianapolis?" And I'm like, I think Indianapolis loves him, a lot too. So I think that he is a top priority for them, along with Dio and figuring out his situation. But I think that Will Fries is the top candidate to come back, and he will get a payday. I don't think the leg injury will affect it much, if at all. And, I mean, he might be a little bit cheaper. I don't know if you come out and shell out a ton of money to a guy who's coming off an injury, but assuming he hasn't had any setbacks and knowing his character, him being a former 7th-round pick, the humility that's in that as well, he's going to get paid. And so I know, which I always look at, Spot Rack has it at him making a 4-year, $56.5 million deal. About $14 million a year annually is what they project him to get or land.
Let's go there. Sorry to interject, but let's go there because you brought up the number. The Dio Dangbo number was rumored around $16 million.
Yeah.
So that's 16 Dio.
14
Fries. That's 30. Right now they have 35-ish. Quarterback's going to cost you more than 5 if you're going to create any sort of substance of competition. You start to add all this up, and again, this gets into A, can you bring back both Dio and Fries? Let's start there. And then B, you've got to open up some cap space elsewhere if you're going to go make other moves.
And that's why I think the biggest domino on the Colts' front, besides picking a quarterback, is deciding what happens with Braden Smith. Because to your point, Kevin, I think that they're still high on him as a player. It's just that regardless of the personal issue that kept him out for more than a month to end the season, he was going to have to play at an all-pro or Pro Bowl level for them to justify paying him $19 million going into this season. So, again, if they were to release him, that would create $17 million in cap space. And you do have Matt Gonzalez, who stepped in and was pretty solid in his absence. I'm not saying he's Braden Smith, but that's a factor. And they have to answer that question before they can answer any other questions.
And the 17-ish million or whatever you would open up, it wouldn't have to go right to right tackle.
Right.
Because you just said James Matt Gonzalez, theoretically, you draft him in the 3rd round. Boom, he started, 8 games for you last year, something like that. He could receive that baton. Obviously, you still would have some question marks. You would need some depth, but boy, you start adding the numbers up, man, and it gets, oh boy, it gets real dicey real quick.
I think there are probably some other moves to be made. And are there any trades in the offing for the Colts this week?
4th rounder, is that what you said, Mark?
2026 4th rounder, yeah. And the guy from the Rams went for a 6th round pick.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, would you trade away some guys to eat up cap space?
That's what I'm wondering.
Isn't Raekwon Davis the no-brainer, James? You had that, I think, in your story last week. Raekwon Davis, backup defensive tackle. It was a 2-year, $14 million deal?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you part ways with him, that opens up what? 6, 7?
I want to say it was about $7 million or around that number.
Gosh, that just seems like a no-brainer, right?
Yeah, I would not bet on him.
The one thing that I will pause my own self on, Lou Anarumo, and I say this very nicely, he liked to have some big fat dudes in his defensive line. Like if you look at Cincinnati, they had that with DJ Reader, BJ Hill, some of these other guys. The Colts really haven't been that. So, if you're looking at, possible need that might not be crazy high on the list or super attention grabbing, dudes that eat a whole lot at training tables could be on the horizon for the Colts.
A lot of Capri Sun.
A lot of
Dino
Tyrannosaurus
Dino
Rex.
Nuggets. That's how that works.
Yeah. Now, Max Bowen, he will literally aggressively play with them, but for the most part, he'll eat the T-Rex.
Does he bite the head off, though? Like aggressively?
Not that malicious, but, we're talking moments where, T-Rex is up in the air and he's got the Velociraptor on the ground, and, it's quite the scene.
I'll tell you what, you put me and Max
But just
Bowen
put it in your
down.
stomach. That's all I care. Eventually, if it goes in the stomach, that's all I care.
I just need some chompers like he has when he picks his his Colts picks during the season.
How that goes.
It's amazing how many people have reached out, say, don't hate on Dino Nuggets. Fred chimed in here earlier. My wife works from home, and Dino Nuggets are her quick go-to lunch.
I'm telling you, man.
I think Dino Nuggets are great.
He's got more to add here.
Yeah.
He goes, believe me, you don't want to eat them and leave her with none.
It's a smart man. Probably learned through experience.
I get to be a little selfish with my Dino Nuggets. No sharing it.
DJ loved it. This is great. Yes, again, Dino Nuggets are. I said Dunkaroos.
Yeah.
Gosh, now I all of a sudden want to go to the grocery and get some.
Koala Yummies, those were also solid back in the day. Anybody remember those?
No, I don't.
They were like little cracker, like koalas, but you bit into them and there's chocolate inside. And they're
really
outstanding.
Man, that does sound
They were
good.
delicious.
I used to always enjoy the fun dip. I like the stick.
Mm-hmm.
Did you like the dip, though? It got to be a little too sweet for me sometimes.
Yeah, probably I could do like 3/4 of the bag of dip, and then I was done with it. But the fun dip stick.
Those are good.
I was always a fan of. All right, one final time here. Fan Morning Show, busy day, recapping hoops. We'll throw the Jiffy Lube stat of the day at you. I have a feeling it will be about one of the teams we talked about. We'll do that one final time here. Kevin Bowen, Jeff Ricker, James Boyd, and Mark Dyson.
Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Jeff Rickard. I want to dig in a little bit deeper on some high school basketball last night because I love going to high school gyms like you. Didn't have a chance last night because of other things going on with my kids. But try to give us all just the atmosphere for that sectional at Carmel High School last night. In Noblesville and Fishers. You got just great 4 fun teams to watch, too.
I'll put it like this, Jeff. I get over to Carmel, park the car in overflow parking, walk over, and there are people who are so excited for this game in all different ages, seriously. You got people carrying babies in there, carrying kids in there. You got kids wearing jerseys of their favorite high school players. You got the girls, young girls carrying the pom-poms. They want to be like the cheerleaders. And then you got me, just, random basketball fan walking in. And there's a split second there when I was hitting the validate my ticket. You had to do it on your phone. I was like, boy, I hope this guy didn't screw me. It's going to be very embarrassing to walk back to the car.
You didn't think that about him, did you?
Come on, I can't call out Ray Mattingly like that. He's a loyal listener.
No.
Dude. He hooked you up.
He is the man for this, but I was just thinking, like, it's going to be one of those things like my Wi-Fi doesn't work. Not I mean like from him screwing me. I mean like this guy, meaning myself. Like I'm going to get up there and like hit the wrong button or my phone doesn't have signal. But no, it was great getting in. And then trying to find a spot was kind of hard. And I got there probably 5 minutes before the tip-off of the first game. And then even after the first game, everyone's like, all right, like we'll probably like find some better seats or move around. Like when these people leave, no one really left.
It's good basketball.
It was kind of like, if you wanted to see the second game and have a good seat for the second game, you probably should have got there maybe at the latest halftime of the first game. And I don't know how you guys are, but I hate like I want to see all the game. So I will go early. I'll watch both games, and I enjoyed myself. It was good. Noblesville was a good team. They moved on. And then obviously seeing John Anthony Hall from Fishers, I mean, my goodness, can that dude fly?
Notre Dame was kind of in on him late football-wise, and I was kind of hoping that they would get him, but off to Stanford there. That's an Andrew Luck GM guy, right?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I was like, man, you're going to be working with, a guy who was a legend in this city, and I wonder when those conversations start, what that'll be like, because that kid can play. And I also think it's cool. Last thing I'll say about this, and it's whether it's him or anybody else, it is cool to see kids not specialize anymore.
I think it's important.
Yes.
Well, it's cool to see that, and it's cool to see coaches that are open-minded to it.
Yes, because by all accounts, he has no reason to be on a basketball court other than I want to play with my friends, I want to win a state championship, and I want to enjoy my high school experience, which I think is really cool. And just being honest, there's a lot of kids who specialize and their parents pressure them to do it, and they're not even as good as John Anthony Hall is at football. So I'm like, and most kids, those listening, don't force your kids to do one sport, and honestly, force your kids to do more than one sport, because I was one of those kids who didn't know what I didn't know, man. I played basketball throughout high school. My last year, I did 1 year of track, and I was mad at myself for not doing it all 4 years because I had so much fun.
And you guys might be able to back me up on this. Done so many interviews with professional athletes over the years, and one of the things I like to ask guys when we have the time and it's the appropriate place is, what do you think about being a multi-sport athlete in high school? And every single one, I kid you not, Kevin, every single one of them I've talked to said, play as many sports as you can. It will help you as you become
universal.
What you're going to be.
And I think and this may be more of a summer topic, I also think maybe the numbers would indicate this, probably a percentage of you don't burn out as much in whatever your best sport is. Down the road, Mark Zachary at Ben Davis, perfect example of it. Again, I brought up David Bell earlier, that Warren team. I mean, I remember back when Romeo Langford had those New Albany teams. Rondell Moore was playing on the basketball team. So awesome scene last night in Carmel. Greg Rakestraw going to join us coming up Friday to talk more about sectional action. Those games will continue tonight. For our Jiffy Lube stat of the day, very fittingly, I've always brought it up. What Braden Smith did in Sectional 8 a few years back was one to remember. So why not a couple Indiana high schoolers? The Homestead product, Fletcher Lawyer. The Westfield product, Braden Smith. Last night, first time in Purdue school history, 2 players have made 7 or more three-pointers in a game. When I saw that, there was part of me that thought Carson Edwards or Ryan Klein.
You would think so in that run, right?
If there ever was going to be one duo that did it, it would be them. And I thought Chris Foreman also had mentioned that they were the first Big Ten duo to do that like in 20 years. So 7 of 12, 7 of 13 from behind the arc last night. Lawyer 7 of 12. Braden 7 of 13. Special night for them as Purdue puts up 100 on Rutgers. This Jiffy Lube Super Stat of the Day brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
You're going to win a lot of basketball games. You have two guys, one goes 7 for 12 and one 7 for 13 from three-point range. You're going to win a lot of basketball games.
I'm always proud of it. Somehow this got retweeted a couple weeks ago, and this is just me bragging. I don't know. It probably had to be game 1 or 2. The tweet was from like mid-November of Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyers' freshman year. And, they beat somebody. I don't know who they beat, Marquette or, somebody. And all I tweeted out was, those two dudes are going to win a lot of games at Purdue. Well, here we are 2.5 years later, narrator's voice. And I would say they've won a lot of games for the Boilermakers. So we'll see where they fall kind of seed-wise. Again, if you're going to nerd out over Purdue right now and their bracket status, I think one thing to watch is I've seen them as like a 4 seed in some of these brackets, and oftentimes, if you're one of the last 4 seeds, you are not a protected seed. Okay, so what does that mean? In the first 2 rounds, they try to geographically reward you if you're the 1, 2, 3, and some of the 4 seeds. But in a lot of these brackets, Purdue's been like a 4 seed out in Seattle or out west. They aren't the protected seed. So I don't know how much fans care about it. I'd have to look up the regional sites here. From a local standpoint, I want to say like Cleveland, Milwaukee. I mean, you have some here that are still in the Midwest. Obviously, last year Purdue benefited from Gainbridge Fieldhouse for the first 2 rounds. It's a regional site this year over at Lucas Oil Stadium. But if you're a Purdue fan and you care about that stuff, you want to travel to see them in the first 2 rounds of the tournament, you probably are rooting for a win on Friday, and you're rooting for some sort of Big Ten championship type of run, and that could increase their seeding and keep them a little bit closer to West Lafayette here for the first couple of rounds.
Big Ten tournament's going to be brutal.
Oh, tremendous.
It's going to be brutal.
I mean, it's wide open. Wide open. Yeah, I can't wait to see the odds on it. I mean, it's going to be I don't even know who you would call the favorite.
I hear odds, and I see Mark just the wheels start turning.
Yeah,
and
he was
all Indiana parlay, baby.
He perked up right there.
You never give up. Never give in.
We persevere.
There you go.
We're coming back.
When Jim Valvano said that quote, he meant the all-Indiana parlay is what you're saying?
That's exactly what he was talking about. That and the acquisition of
Don't ever give up.
That and the acquisition of offensive linemen in the offseason's got Mark going today.
Yep. I'm excited. Sports arousal, as JMV would say.
Anybody else want to go after that one?
I mean, I don't know how you could, but I will say I'm excited to see the women's tournament come to Indianapolis. Obviously, we know how we feel about our city and the events that we host here, and it's another chance to kind of flex our muscle with some good basketball. So,
is there any way that one's not a championship game with UCLA and USC?
Boy, it would have to be some heck of some upsets there. It's possible, but to me, they're in a different tier than the other Big Ten teams on the women's side. And obviously, we know what Juju Watkins meant and Lauren Betts for UCLA. But I thought it was cool. I mean, to bring the Indiana ties to it, seeing Reggie Miller and Cheryl like going at it, I was like, this is my type of family.
Mm-hmm.
Like, never agree, never on the same side, always disagreeing. I mean, he scored 40 in high school. She said I scored 100. I mean, it's amazing.
Just to remind people about the Big Ten men's basketball and women's basketball tournaments, and certainly I think we all speak and want it to be in the city of Indianapolis. We've got both here this year. Next year, the men's tournament will go to Chicago. It will return here in 27 and then out to Vegas in 28. On the women's side of it, it will be here next year. So just the women here next year, just the men here in 27. And then the women's tournament will go to Vegas and Detroit the next 2 years. Vegas is the city. That is the city right now that is coming for all of these events. And obviously, they feel like they can carry a Big Ten presence, as absurd as that sounds, in trying to find a little bit of a happy medium to the West Coast. I think it's ludicrous. I saw the Big Ten football media days are going to be in Vegas in late July. When I think of hell, I think of July in Las Vegas.
Vegas and college basketball are meant for one thing and one thing only. That's opening few days of the NCAA tournament. That's it. That's it.
I agree, but money talks, as we know. Money changes a lot.
So basically what I'm saying is don't take like this 2 weeks for granted.
No.
Because this is not going to be the norm, unfortunately, moving forward. We'll have the women's tournament here one time in the next 3 years. We'll have the men's tournament here one time in the next 3 years. And obviously you sprinkle in your NCAA tournament appearances. Is it Final Four next year? I think that's right? Men's Final Four next year? Does that sound right? 26.
26.
Pretty sure. Mark, if you don't mind, double check, look that up. I always feel like they give you the regional feeding into the Final Four next year. I think that's usually how they do it. But it will be a busy 2 weeks over at Gamebridge Fieldhouse. And again, unfortunately, that's not going to be the norm here in future years.
Well, it comes to that. It comes to the combine. But I will say this: I know that other places will spend money and they'll make it attractive for these leagues and these associations, but nobody does it better than we do it here. That's just the way it is. And that's not just me. You guys work with people from other cities all the time. They all say that.
I got to tell this to Tyrese Halliburton, who always dunks on the Big Ten tournament. So let's get him out to a game. How about that? I know he's not a big fan of Big Ten slow, pick and roll, hard-nosed basketball, but in all seriousness, I think it's great. I'm excited about it. And when the city is buzzing like this for basketball, you're in the right time of the year. I mean, you got the Pacers trying to get playoff positioning. You have sectional basketball. Then obviously we're coming off girls basketball state championships. So there's just a lot going on and a lot of hoops to digest.
Well, looking forward to covering it all for you. That's going to bring it to an end for us. We've got Clinton Yates coming up next, Jake Query at noon, JMV at 3. It's a Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.